have PunkDisorder back. How are
Hello,
you?
everyone. Hi, I am doing quite well.
How was your Christmas?
Oh, this holiday season was good. It was fun, but it was also like really hectic, which
Ooh,
that's everybody. Um, I just got a lot of things going on between work and family, and it was hectic, but it was really enjoyable. And it's I've been kind of taking January as a little bit of a cool down time to catch my breath and kind of realign myself so I can stay focused for the upcoming year.
okay. Did you get what you wanted?
Oh yeah. So my wife is really really good at Christmas shopping. And
Nice.
so a few of the things. One was a this large stand, not stand, I guess like a rotating, like the CD racks that rotate.
Uh huh.
It's one of those, but it's specifically sized to hold DVD sized, which is game cases. It's specifically sized for that. And because I was running out of room with my game storage, because I collect video games, I collect consoles, I collect video game titles. My backlog is the grossest thing I've ever looked at. And I have probably 500 something like physical copies of games, and I was running out of space to store them. I was just starting to kind of put them wherever, and if there was a place that you could stack an item, I would put it there. And
Ah. Okay.
um, now all of them fit neatly onto this spinning rack in one corner. They're all separated by Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and retro. It's and so that's its own topic. What do we even consider retro these days?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean
So
sometimes you have retro light games now. Like well, here we go, Frogun.
yeah,
let me
the
spend this 30 minutes talking about Frogun again.
no man. Speaking of what, you gotta play Froga.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man. Um, yeah, and so that's its own thing. And then we have retro revivals, and then there's like pseudo retro games that try to emulate the style of retro games, but with modern knowledge of game mechanics. It's its own thing. I could go onto a very, very deep rabbit hole about how it's more interesting to me how gameplay conventions over the year have changed than graphics. And like how game design knowledge has grown. Like yeah, you can make things prettier, but you can also learn from the mistakes of the past and make games that aren't completely awful.
Mm-hmm.
So
What is I got a quick
mm,
question, but what is your ideal gaming room? Like something you don't have just yet, but you would love to have it one day.
I'm really close to it.
You are? Okay, good.
um, yeah, I currently am sitting with my computer on my desk. I have three monitors. One's an ultra wide. I'm not actually using my ultra wide as my main because it's not, the support isn't there yet, and I play a lot of older games, and so the ultra wide just kind of ends up being a nuisance and like a hampering instead of something super useful.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using my 1440p instead, which is just a like a full HD, I think it's called. And then I have a sideways monitor for monitoring like Twitch chats and Discord and stuff like that. So I have that. Then I have a TV above the ultra wide to my left, where I have some, like, I bought what I call streaming consoles,
Mm-hmm.
which are another console of one that I already own, but specifically so it's going to be a bit more mobile, so I can disconnect it, reconnect it, and it's plugged into this TV where I have a streaming capture card, so I can play games on this TV and capture them on my computer. And then I have my main TV over to my right with a with a speaker mounted on it. And I currently, just for right now, I guess this is where my ideal gaming room would come in. Right now, I only have out like my consoles that I still actively play. So I have the PS5, the Series X, the Switch, PS3, a Wii U. Yes, I still play the Wii U. Fight me. then the Xbox 360, and the Wii because the Wii can play GameCube games.
Okay.
So yeah, that's currently what I have. But I have in my closet my PS4, my Xbox One, my NES, Super NES, Genesis, um, Dreamcast. I'm trying to think of all the ones that I've all the collectible like consoles I've gotten over the year, and but all those are sitting in storage right now because I don't really have the space or the connections for them. So my ideal gaming room has a few more TVs, preferably plenty of 4K HDMI TVs, but then also one or two TVs that are compatible with 4:3 aspect ratio, which was what a lot of older consoles were designed around. If you try playing an NES game on a widescreen TV today, it will have the two huge black bars, and it'll only be shown in like a very small square that
Mm-hmm.
almost looks like a rectangle, small rectangle that almost looks like a square. That's the aspect ratio. That's as wide as it can go. So yeah.
So, what would be the dominant color for that room?
There would be no dominant color. The dominant colors would be blue, green, and red.
Okay.
You could probably do the math of what those would represent, but I would want to have a setup where one part of the room, or like maybe one full wall, is all PlayStation, one is all Xbox, and one is all Nintendo. And then maybe because there's four walls to a room, I could also if it was big enough, I could have all the seating in the middle, and then have the fourth wall dedicated to retro gaming. um but yeah, that's more or less my ideal setup. I appreciate all gaming consoles throughout that have come out throughout the years, and I'm really hoping that I can keep this collection well preserved for a long time to come, because I think that gaming is a medium that had such a kind of a weird rocky start in its acceptance as art. And I think that a lot of things aren't going to be preserved because it is a form of art that a lot of young people and kids can interact with, which is obviously isn't a bad thing. But also, when we're kids, we don't understand the value of some things.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how many beat up PlayStations and GameCubes and whatnot there are, and very hard to find high quality Wii U game pads, because most of them have a bunch of smudges and things from kids playing them. So yeah, I think that just having this like library collection archive to preserve gaming throughout the years is really what I guess my ideal game room really turns into.
Very nice. You know, when you said blue, green, and red, my mind immediately jumped to what flag is that?
I think there's like an African country that has blue, green, and red on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But then,
Um,
as you were talking, I was like, "Oh, wait, duh, that's Sony, Xbox, and Nintendo."
um, yeah. So that's kind of it. That's more or less what I want. Of course, I would have. I think I would probably have just two, maybe four computers in that room. But then again, it's very difficult to plan LAN parties as an adult. So,
Mm.
but I would
It's
love to have that capability.
it's hard to have friends. At least it is for me as an adult.
Yeah, it's weird, engaging with a lot of hobbies as an adult. Because I play Yu-Gi-Oh, that's another, big thing that I do, and it's really difficult to meet up with people in person because I have a group that I play with frequently,
Hmm.
but we rarely ever are able to meet up in person. So we do phone duels, where you can have your phone pointed down, like your phone on, uh, those phone mounts where it can, grip onto your phone. You can bend it at weird angles.
Right.
You can point it down at the table so you can play cards, and your opponent can see what you're doing, so they can understand the board state. But I far prefer playing in person. It is so weird doing that for a long time, because then you get to meet people in person. You're like, oh gosh, I have to be. It just feels different,
Hmm.
and so, and I really do think that is a weird thing about being an adult, especially the more digital our our age, the more digital we get into the digital age, the harder it becomes to make a lot of those, authentic connections and, uh, you know, meet people on common ground and whatnot. But
Okay.
that's just one of those things. But
Yeah.
you're pretty cool.
I hope so. I hope I would be like that in real life. Well, in person also. I think I've only met one friend I've met online in person. That was a long time ago. I actually had to drive all the way down to Florida to pick him up and take him back to my state. And my dad, um, before I went down there, I let my dad know because I like to back when I was single, I would let my parents know whenever I was going out of state, and just to let them know if I ever disappeared, they had some kind of idea of where I was. And so,
Wow. Imagine having that kind of freedom.
and
Going out of state, I didn't do that.
I do what?
I never went out of state, but until I was like an adult and I was moving out to Ohio because I lived in California, and the idea of, oh yeah, I'm going out of state, I'll be right back. What?
Well, I just kind of I like to think about what would happen just in case because I'm always thinking about dying. It's just one of those things that's in the back of my mind. So I'm like, okay, well, if I die, I need to prepare this and that, and this and that. It's not a very healthy mindset, but that's just for
Mm.
some reason that's just how I've always been. But um, so anyway, I let my dad know I'm going down to Florida to meet this a friend of mine that I've known for about 9, 10 years. So we were pretty comfortable with each other and how we worked, and so all of a sudden my dad starts texting me saying, "Son, I looked at his Facebook profile and he's got Kermit the Frog with Muslim writing. He's gonna kill you." And I'm like, "What?"
What? What? Whoa! I don't know about that one, Chief.
I'm like, "Dad, that's just his way of expressing his humor. It's just Kermit the Frog Muslim writing. That's how he picks fun."
It's called a meme.
Yes. And he's like, "Son, please don't go down there. I'm gonna have to call the police or something." I'm like, "Call the police? I'm 20. I'm like 21 years old. What are you gonna do?" How- it's like my son's going down to Florida to meet a friend he found online. Oh, well, how old is he? He's like 21. Oh, well,
He's
he's
like
an
20.
adult. He can do what he
Well,
can.
why are you worried, sir? Well, this friend had a Kermit the Frog on his Facebook page. Whoa, whoa, whoa! We got to get him immediately. He's in serious danger.
How soon will he be in Florida, sir? But yeah, we had a great time. It was within 3 days. Unfortunately, we had kind of had to rush a lot of stuff, but it was a great time. And then I don't. I guess my dad was kind of mad at me for a week, but he eventually got over it, like he usually does. But
Oof.
um, my I just want to mention my ideal gaming room. I'm nowhere near close to it. I have to put my gaming setup next to the TV in the living room, which is where I'm at currently. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of awkward recording podcasts because my wife will just walk in, and sometimes I had to pause and splice where I had to interact with her. And so what I would like a cabin room with little wood paneling or something like that. It looks like I'm in a cabin, and
Mm, like a
something
she
nice and
said,
cozy lighting, like amber lighting.
like a she said, but for a dude, so a man cave.
Yeah, something like that.
Hold
And I kind of want a little steam machine, so when I'm walking around, the the mist
on.
moves as I walk around the room.
That would be very interesting. That would be very colorful.
And I just want shelves. I love physical copies, so I got to have shelves with all my games on it and everything like that, and start building a collection too. Because right now I can't really collect a bunch of games because I don't really have anywhere to put them. I got them in a really crappy roll spinning shelf that really
Mhm.
it's just it's like heck, what's that popular furniture store?
IKEA?
IKEA, yeah.
Yeah.
It's something from IKEA, so I don't know how long it's going to last. It can barely even turn, so I want a proper
Mm,
gaming shelf. So,
yeah, I know that's a big thing. Running out of space, like that was actually between the last time we talked and now, one of the big things that I guess you could also consider a Christmas gift was my wife helped me move my entire room around because I had it set up one way, and I was like, it's nice, it's okay, but I never felt like I had space to store things. It was always hard to find things. So we went through and pretty much just tore everything apart, ripped everything out of the closet, unplugged all my consoles and put them back in their boxes, and then started from square one. And optimized our space because I was like, okay, I think I'm at the point where I can't get much more. There's not going to be another console generation for another 4 years or so, 3 or 4 years depending. There's not going to be, I'm not going to be needing a whole lot of other things or wanting a whole lot of other things. So I think I'm good. I just need to optimize the space I have, and it definitely paid off. I have so much open, breathable space. I have a place to store all my figurines, all my League figurines. I collect the League of Legends figurines, as I am a begrudging denizen of League of Legends. So
Yeah, that's another thing. I would love to be able to collect figurines because they have some for Dark Souls, in
Mm.
Elden Ring, I believe. Do they have one? I know they have vinyl records. That's a.
I'm 90% sure I saw a Margit one for Elden Ring. I could be
I
wrong.
think you're right. They also have a one for the Nameless King, and he's actually my favorite boss of all time. So I would love to have him
Mm.
sitting around somewhere.
Nameless King was probably the closest I ever came to needing to like stop playing for a bit,
Hmm.
take a breath, and then come back to the game. I think he was the first boss in Dark Souls that made me go, you know what? I am now on tilt. I need to walk away. We're gonna come back to this tomorrow. We're gonna play something else. We're gonna play something easy and relaxing. Let's go jump on Maple Story. That's a nice, relaxing game. And then I came back and I killed him in 2 tries after
Nice.
that.
Yeah, I actually practiced. I was practicing him right before Elden Ring released, and I feel like he really helped me with my progress with Elden Ring. I think he also helped me set a standard for what I wanted for boss fights, for boss fight completions. So,
Mhm.
and he, I don't know where I got the whole not rolling motivation from because I didn't. I definitely rolled with his fight. So I'm still not sure where that came from exactly. I guess maybe I was doing it a little bit with Ludwig. Cause yeah, that's right. Sorry, I actually was practicing Ludwig after Nameless King. I just never got it nailed down enough. So it was Ludwig that got me into just running away from attacks. So
Mhm.
I need to go back to him eventually and just do a no hit. I'm definitely gonna roll though, cause I'm not that comfortable with it.
Yeah, you don't do hitless without rolling. Sorry, not sorry.
Thing with Ludwig, I used to hate the fight, but once I started studying it more, I really started appreciating the first phase, and then I started hating the second phase because I don't know, something about the second phase feels off, but I just need to practice it more. It's just one of those fights where it just changes drastically and doesn't really complement each other, unfortunately, which is what a few Elden Ring boss fights are like. But um, so, what have you been playing lately?
So lately I have been playing a few things. I have been playing for my next video. I've been playing Pokemon Nuzlocke because I really, really, really like torturing myself. And I've also been playing a lot of World of Warcraft lately. I've
Hmm.
noticed I have just been like, it feels like this is the most divided I have ever seen the WoW fan base, and this is after Shadowlands. But Dragonflight, the most recent expansion, came out in November, has been like 50-50, dead center. I will see a post every day. I'm really enjoying Dragonflight, and I despise everything about Dragonflight. It is worse than Shadowlands, which
Hmm.
Shadowlands was pretty unanimously like the worst because everyone was like, "What was this story about?" And they were like, "Oh." And everybody is there's a fun theory that goes around the WoW community of Shadowlands was just a crazy fever dream that everybody had incited by an old god. So, like, think Cthulhu mythos. There's these thing called old gods, and the end of the expansion before Shadowlands, the final raid was against an old god called Nazoth. And so everybody said, so we fought Nazoth, and then we all hallucinated going to the afterlife, and then that all faded away. So, yeah.
So in World of Warcraft, what mission types get you excited, and what missions make you roll your eyes?
Um, it's weird. So I think that a lot of the live service stuff makes me roll my eyes, but a lot of the other things, there's a lot of really good reasons uh in WoW for like, a lot of the quests. There's a really good balance of like silly quests and genuinely, like intriguing, engaging, high stakes quests where you're like, "Oh, wow, that's intense." um and there, so like you're doing primarily side quests, especially because I love leveling characters. That's just kind of my thing that I do is, they call players who like leveling characters altaholics. Um and so, with the leveling zones, you go through, you grab as many quests as you can, you speed run your way as best you can through them, optimizing your pathing, how fast you're killing the mobs, turn everything in, get a bunch of levels, rinse and repeat, multiple times. But I think it's when it gets to kind of the live servicey stuff, when you get your character to max level and you're playing through the end game stuff, and it's like, okay, now come here and do your dailies, do your weeklies, and it's just like, I really, really want to have fun and not, do a job, which is why I've been primarily just leveling alts, because I really, really enjoy. I have this really, really dumb goal that I want to have max level of every single spec in the game. So there's classes, and there's like 15 classes, but every class has like two to four specs within it. So each spec or specialization has is one of the Holy Trinity roles: tank, healer, DPS. Um, and then also DPS gets split into ranged DPS and melee DPS. And so each of them have, you could kind of envision what some of the specs would be like. So mages are all ranged DPS, but they have fire, frost, and arcane. All of those play differently. The hunters have beast mastery, which is you has a lot of interaction with the pet. Marksmanship, which has very little, if no interaction with your pet. All of your damage is from your gun or your bow or your crossbow. And then they have survivalism, which is like a spear hunter that gets up close and uses a bunch of traps and things. So yeah, survivalism is super interesting. But um, yeah, so I've just been trying to level one of every spec because I am insane, and I should probably not do that for too long because it takes a little while. Not too long, especially since I've gotten pretty efficient with the guide that I'm using for leveling. I've gotten pretty efficient to where I can do it in about like 6 to 8 hours per character, which is not that bad to go from 1 to 60. But it's still, yeah, that's more or less what I've been doing. And lastly, not related to WoW, the last thing that I've been playing a decent amount of recently is Sonic the Hedgehog. All of them,
All
before
of
you
them.
ask.
I was about to say, which one? Because there's like a million of them.
Yeah, there's like 30 something mainline games. Yeah, I recently decided, hey, there's a lot of game series out there that I haven't played ever. I have never rolled credits on a single one of these, but they've been hugely influential to the entire gaming landscape, and I feel like I should experience them at least once. And so I'm starting this new series. This is called "Am I a Fan of?" question mark, and it's gonna be, I'm gonna pick a smattering, like what the community seems to generally agree is a good representation of that series, as well as, and so I'm gonna try and get a bit of the good, a bit of the bad, and good of the meh, and play through those. So for Sonic, I have 10 games. I have a list. I see if I ever memorize. I'm playing Sonic 1 because, you always want to know where a game series started. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, because a lot of the community seems to agree that that was where the 2D Sonic games peaked, and some say Sonic as a whole peaked and it was just downhill from there. Then Sonic Adventure 2. Uh, I believe I am playing Sonic O. I want to play Sonic '06 after that. If you know about Sonic 2006, it is infamous for being the worst of the worst that Sonic has ever the Sonic team has ever pushed out. It is buggier than buggy. It is very, very, very horrific.
Mm, jeez.
um, yeah, and also the story is like, excuse me, Sonic falls in love with a human. Does this is it? Let's not ask questions. This story was, as I best heard it described, this story was not written with people asking questions in mind.
Do you think Sonic should have gone to the 3D platforming style, or should it have stayed at 2D?
Um, Hot take. Sorry if this makes anybody watching angry. I really think that Sonic in 3D is both possible and does work well in a lot of different instances. It's just that Sonic Team doesn't seem to want to stick with something that is like proven and known,
Mm-hmm.
and it's both to Sonic's benefit and detriment. Where one of the consistent things, because I've played a little bit of each of these games before I started committing to the full playthroughs, and uh, it seems like Sonic Team sort of has just been throwing at the wall. What is Sonic even about? And to the point where I am of the belief that Sonic isn't the main character in Sonic games. Sonic is a mascot who can be morphed and molded to fit into any situation and be a generic hero protagonist that you can relate to with a transferable set of skills. Is there a problem that you can solve by running really fast or hitting something while curled up into a ball? If yes, then you can put Sonic in it.
Doesn't
Shrug.
he, in one game, turn into a monster? Does that only
Yes,
happen in one game?
yes, Sonic Unleashed. He turns into have the werehog, and they were like, "Hey, God of War's popular. Let's do that."
Yeah, they do that in a lot of games sometimes, just to try to freshen things up. Because Jack 2 did that also, and of course God of War. And it's strange how the game developers, when they're designing a game, they're like, we need a super mode. I think Darksiders did that also, right? Yeah, they did.
Feel like I'm pretty sure which Darksiders
I think
was
I've
it?
only played the first one.
Hmm.
Did they do it in the first one?
I don't remember. I think I've only played a little bit of three. That's another series I need to play for this series. It's quite a lot.
But yeah, it's just one of those gaming tropes that you'll see. It's kind of get, it's not really up to that point where you're like, oh, I'm so tired of seeing this. But I guess game developers have finally realized, oh yeah, that's being done a bit too much. But I really wish developers would notice other things that are being done too much. You're talking,
It got
mostly talking about Ubisoft right now, because apparently
Oh
Ubisoft
god.
is kind of in some warm, kind of in some
Oh, did
warm
you
water
see
right
that
now, aren't
video
they?
too? Yeah, you saw that video too of Ubisoft, their last investors meeting. They were like, um, "We are floundering. We have pushed back Skull and Bones for like the fifth time,
Uh,
and all of our biggest games this year did not meet sales projections." And everybody was like, "Wow, who could have thought? You guys have only made the same game, but year after year after year." I mean, the and Rabbids, they said that one didn't do well, but it was such a fresh concept that everybody was like, "Oh, we like the concept, but it just didn't sell as well because it's such a weird franchise." Hey guys, so when you think Super Mario, yeah, and you think of the Rabbids from Rayman, do you ever just look at them and say, "Wouldn't it be cool if they were in an XCOM game?" That's what I think. No, no one's ever thought that. Well, that's what we're doing. So,
Man, Ubisoft has a lot of power right now, and they're almost drowning, and they have the potential to create something unique. I mean, Skull and Bones, I guess you could say, oh, that's a totally new AI, but it's just kind of a rip off of Assassin's Creed boat combat, which was also a rip off of Sly Cooper's boat combat. Because I remember when I played Sly Cooper 3 and you were battling on ships, I'm like, oh crap, this is you could do this in Assassin's Creed. They must have taken this directly from it. Um,
I mean, there's only so many layers
Yeah.
of what's the word, disambiguation or whatever, of drawing and referencing something until it's like, yes, this is boat combat. I think they ripped that off from the 1700s.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I liked it in Sly Cooper a lot better than Assassin's Creed, really. It was well,
Yeah,
it's kind of weird because whenever a leak appears on your ship, you have to hit it in order it to be fixed. So that's kind of a strange logic, but
dude, punch holes and they suddenly get smaller.
you
Duh.
got in order to fix holes in the ship, you got to punch it.
Yeah, that's actually another series that's on my list. I have never rolled credits on an Assassin's Creed game.
I've only finished maybe two or three.
Mhm. Yeah, I've realized it's so weird because have you heard that statistic that only 20% of people ever finish games that they buy? Like, if you look at most popular games, AAA, whatever, big name games, most games that give achievements, especially for finishing the game, have about a 18 to 25% completion rate.
Hmm.
So that's a little weird, but it also makes a lot of sense.
I I want to one day talk about game ideas that I've had. I actually thought about one today that I thought would be really cool, and it's actually sports associated with sports, and it's kind of mixed up with Dark Souls a little bit.
Dude, Dark Souls basketball, you're running down the court. If the opponent steals the ball, they get to cut your legs off. I think that's how it works.
Well, I don't care if a developer hears my ideas and then makes them. I just want to see the ideas done. I have no interest in wanting to make money off of it. I just want to see it in a video game so I can play it. So my idea is to basically design boss fights around sports and their mechanics. Like you can have a goal sticking out of a glob of a boss or a robot, a giant fish, and you have to. It's not like it's going to be a simple game either. You got to use precision to get that
So like
basket.
they're all armored. They can't be affected by any of your bullets, your arrows, whatnot. But there is a small ball in the room that has some sort of explosive property or whatever,
Yeah,
and you have to be able to kick that ball into this goal that's off the ground. And okay, I could see
yeah.
that.
It sounds silly, but I feel like with with a lot of creative design, it could work really well. And plus, whenever you pick up, you get to have different kind of sports tools too, like a baseball bat, which I think would require the most skill because maybe the boss will have holes in his design where you have
Mm.
to nail it just right to get significant damage. Also, soccer perhaps.
I could see that working, but only if there was like a trajectory line
Yeah,
for the baseball, because outside of that, that would just become a guessing game
yeah,
of, well, I sure hope this one goes in.
yeah.
You'd
Exactly.
have to have like a bit of a weird to aim trajectory line
Mm-hmm.
so that it donk, and then you at least have an idea of where the ball is going. So you're not just trying to guess for 10 minutes before you get the first one in. You're like, okay, cool. Now I got to do that 5 more times, and I beat the boss. Easy peasy.
And also the music will also change beat and tempo with depending on which sports tool you grab. Like once you grab the basketball, it's like do 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 do, and then when you grab a
Oh yeah,
baseball bat,
having a
dun 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 dun
transition.
dun 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 dun.
I could actually see that. That would be a really interesting. I mean, the closest thing to what you suggested that I can think of is if you Super Giant Games. They're the people that made Hades. They've done Bastion.
Mm-hmm.
They made a game called Pyre, where
Fire.
you play 3v3 basketball, and as you win a bunch of games and whatnot, and you make your team and they level up in certain basketball skills. But at the end of every tour, campaign, tournament, whatever, one of them gets to ascend to the afterlife, and then you have to start making like these sort of personal moral choices of like, okay, do I send the rookie who just got on the team and maybe passed the ball and like made one goal all season, or do I send away my guy who's been with me for 4 seasons, has like 100 3 pointers and this and that, and he's done all this stuff, who very much deserves the afterlife.
Hmm.
So yeah, interesting little title there.
Okay. I would also like to have level design associated with the sport tools also. Maybe just kind of like how High in Life worked, wherever you had to shoot certain, you had to use your weapons to shoot certain platform um, parts in order for you to get across. So perhaps maybe if you nailed the basketball, and this would have to be varied really well. That way, it doesn't get old after a while. Because if you kind of just had the same thing, you're like, oh crap, I gotta throw the basketball in the goal again just to get across this gap. I'm like, no, you would have definitely had to change it. It would have to be. It's definitely a concept that had to be handled extremely well in order for it not to feel old after a while.
Yeah, I've seen and I've heard like something I could think of, just off the top of my head, is every time you make a goal from your whatever sport you're currently using, having getting a brief effect for your character. So maybe for baseball, every time you make a quote unquote home run hit, which would whatever could be hitting a boss weak point or a hitting a object in the environment. Your character gets a speed boost to emulate, oh, got your home run, now run the bases, but it stacks. So if you get a bunch of home runs in a row, you can stack a speed boost, and that can lead to secret areas because you have the speed boost. Your jump will also be farther. So there's an area that's like, oh, you couldn't reach this normally, but you got a bunch of home runs, and then you charge at this place and jump over, and look at that secret area, cool stuff. Or basketball, you do a little celebratory extra jump, which seems just like, oh, that's just an aesthetic thing. But then you realize, wait a minute, there's a platform out of reach, but there's a basketball hoop over here. Make a shot, then jump before it goes in, get that extra little boost, and then you make it up to the tall platform. Some ideas.
Okay.
How that could potentially work. But yeah, I don't know how you would integrate soccer. You kick harder.
Yeah, there would definitely have to be weapons that either just simply slowly chip the boss's health down, and then some where you have to use precision to get chunks off. Kind of like how parrying works in Dark Souls, where if you actually nail a parry, you do significant damage because it actually requires timing.
I could see that honestly with like soccer or even baseball, having something like as you are hitting the boss, the ball starts to ricochet back at you, but faster and faster. But your damage will ramp up as you are continuing the juggle or the volley or whatever. So if you are, oh, that would actually be really good for volleyball. Sorry, you have good. That's a good game design idea. There's a lot of stuff you could do with it.
Oh
I am
yes.
not a game designer.
I
There's my credentials.
For football, I would want to make football a really fun mechanic. So I was thinking, whenever you throw the football, it's powerful enough to go through the boss, and then but you have to run to the other side of the boss and catch it for it to inflict more damage on the boss.
That would actually be really interesting
Mm-hmm.
because then being able to change sports, throw the football, swap to baseball, get a home run, use the speed boost, get to the other side, dive, grab, or use the speed boost. You see that the football's about to go away, shoot a basket, jump in the air, grab the football, and oh my goodness, crazy stuff happens.
Oh man, and the better you do, the more people gather around the clap for you, but they can get killed by the boss.
Just 1 second.
Okay.
All right, I am back.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be very interested to see that well executed on. Speaking of not having any game design credentials, you had a few topics that you wanted to cover and talk about that related to game design, and I would also like to hear a bit about those and hear your
Yeah,
thoughts on that.
we better get into that, huh?
Wait, you're supposed to talk about things? What? No way.
Well, I
Crazy,
mean, for
man.
my last two podcasts has been kind of just rifting off. I don't know if you know. I don't know if you listened to all of the other ones, but
I think I listened to one of the recent ones. I do not remember the guy's name. Sorry. It was probably Twilight TA or Glencairn. I do not remember though.
the two most recent one was All Daimo and Twilight. The last one was Twilight.
Twilight. Okay. Yeah, I know. I've the names that I've seen, so I was like, it was probably one of those. But yeah, I did not get to listen all the way through that. But yeah.
So before we get into that, what exactly which topic did you want to touch on first?
Um, I I kind of wanted to go into that. Is it fair to dislike luck based mechanics if you are given the tools to avoid having to deal with the luck?
Okay.
Because I had a very relevant thing happen to me exactly this week that feels a little too perfect uh, for
Okay.
this.
Before we start, I want to ask you. You are aware about good RNG and bad RNG, right?
Yes, generally there is times where it's like, okay, there's good fun RNG, and then there is, why is this game trying to cheat
Well,
RNG?
what I mainly meant by good RNG is just intentional. Where let's just say if you walk into the boss fight and the boss is always doing the same attack in the same pattern in the same order, then it's not RNG. But if
Yeah.
you walk into the boss and he's switching up attacks, that is RNG. You're never going to walk into the same boss.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes you can find consistency. Sometimes a boss will use the same opening. However, after that, it's just freestyle. It's working on a random coder where it's like, okay, do this attack. Okay, well you're that far, then he might do this attack. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a lot of Souls games have baiting where standing about mid distance from a boss will get them to do their laser attack. So
Yeah.
bait the laser, dodge to the side, get a free hit kind of thing.
So that's the good RNG I'm talking about. Stuff that you need to
Hmm.
have an interesting game instead of just having it extremely predictable.
Yeah, no, that okay, yes, that makes better sense. I was like, I probably heard them worded differently, but yes, there is good RNG where, which I guess you could call good RNG, like acceptable variance is what I would call it. Where yeah, we would expect that a boss doesn't just do two sword swings and then return to center, two sword swings, return to center, because that would be the most boring boss in the universe.
Yes.
And so sometimes he does his, his front flip attack. Sometimes he does, some other thing, and I mean, of course there's like mostly going off of Souls bosses because they're generally very well designed. I said generally. I'm looking at you, Sir Alon. um, I'm very weird. I did not like Sir Alon. After I beat Dark Souls 2, I said he is probably in my bottom three of bosses in that game. I
Really?
did
Wow.
not like him. Did not like him. Because he insists upon himself. Have
He
seen the
assists
family?
upon himself.
You've seen the Family Guy clip of the "I did not care for the Godfather." What, Peter? It's like the perfect movie. Did not like it. I did not like it.
I
That's
use
exactly how I felt when I was talking to people about
I
Sir Alon.
I reference Family Guy all the time. I recently watched that '90s show, the preview for that '90s show, and there was a laugh track for literally every single thing they said, and there was no jokes. And so I kept thinking back to that Family Guy clip where they were making that show from Brian's script called Class Holes, and everything James Woods and his co-star was saying was just getting a laugh after every single thing they were saying. Dad, ha 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 ha. Hillary, ha 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 ha. You're my new college roommate. And that '90s show is doing exactly that. I don't know if you've seen previews for that, but it doesn't look very good in my opinion.
But I have not. I generally don't watch a lot of television. I just know, even like Family Guy, I mostly know from memes and clips. But yeah, that was more or less how I felt my thoughts on Suralon was everybody was like, oh, you can't, I bet you can't wait to fight Suralon in the DLC. It was like, oh, he's gonna be so cool. And then I get in there and he's got these really weird delays, and it's like, yeah, once you got used to them, then he just looked awkward. And I don't know. It didn't feel like fighting a smooth swordsman. It felt like a dude who was just kind of guessing what he wanted to do every, couple quarter second and a half. And it's like, I guess sure. And like the run that I did kill him on, I think I only got hit once, but it took me like 15, 20, 30 plus runs to get to him. And if you know Sir Alon's boss run, right?
What do you mean by his boss run? You mean his run back?
From yeah, his run back from
Yeah, I remember it being
bonfire to
crazy.
it's it's dumb. It is bad game design at its finest. Where it's just like, yeah, here's a bunch of Alon Knights who have variable running speed. Speaking of RNG, sometimes they'll kind of trot up to you. Sometimes they'll do what I call the corn cob walk. You see the Alon Knights where they'll do the do, 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 little walk thing where they like shuffle with their legs like pressed together. that walk. Sometimes they'll be able to do a stab out of that. Sometimes they'll be able to swing their sword out of that. Sometimes they'll have to stand and then wind up. It it's such a weird boss run. But yeah, even then when I got to him, he just didn't feel consistent. He didn't feel
Hmm.
smooth. I enjoyed, like, of that DLC, specifically the Old Iron King DLC. I enjoyed fighting the Blue Smelter Demon, and I found the Blue Smelter Demon's boss run to be easier than Suralon's.
Wow.
I know a lot of people have very different interpretations of what is easy and what is hard for them in Souls games, but everybody was saying, "Oh, the Blue Smelter Demon sucks. It's just the boss reskin." Um, and the run back is like the worst in the entire series, and it's awful. But Suralon's amazing. You're gonna love it. And it was the exact opposite for me. Suralon, I was like, I genuinely don't know if I want to beat this boss, because I was doing an all bosses run of DS2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I was like, no, I have to do it. Yes, I did also have to kill Luden Zolin in Frigid Outskirts, and oh boy, did that ever change my perspective. I felt like a spoiled child when I was complaining about Lon's boss fight after doing Frigid Outskirts. You remember that whole part, Eliam Lois, that whole
Oh
DLC?
yes. Yep.
Oh yeah, I was like, I don't think you can forget about that. I'm pretty sure we all have scarring from having to do that run, where it was just like, oh yeah, the reindeer are gonna pop out of nowhere and murder you, unless you can just kind of how do you dodge them? You just kind of guess when they're gonna hit you.
I
I mean,
always,
there's
I always just ran to the left. I don't know. I know I haven't played it in a long time, but it feels like I've always found some kind of bypass, especially with the Sur alone we were mentioning earlier. Because I think I've always found some kind of motion to run through it smoothly, like just not just skipping everything, but just see the thing is the extra scary aspect of Dark Souls 2 is that you're vulnerable while entering the fog door. So if the enemies catch
Mhm.
up with you, that's it.
Yeah, that was one of the things, like, that was annoying for the original Smelter Demon at Iron Keep, but because if you were trying to run past them, they were all on your tail. But Sir Alon, he had, I think, a Diagro wall that was like halfway down the stairs, so sometimes the archers might hit you, but it wasn't super common. But the melees couldn't get to you at the bottom of his staircase. At least in all of my times that I did it, there might be some times that they just change their mind and go, nah, what the heck's a Diagro wall, and they just run right past it. But
Yeah, I should be after I get done with my Demon Souls Soul Level 1 playthrough. I'm going to do Dark Souls 2 next, and I'm
oh, I'm
definitely
so sorry.
I'm definitely debating on the DLC because of how weird it gets there. But uh, that's
I would
definitely gonna be
say,
interesting because of adaptability. That's gonna be the
oh gosh, yeah, here you go. Oh, what does my dodge button do? Well, for SL1, it doesn't work. Oh,
uh,
you mean, do I have to do something? No, you just don't have ADP. Sorry, you just don't have a dodge button.
so
It
it's
rolls you. It makes you look funny. That's it.
so with Soul Level 1, you basically a big side objective is to get armor that increases adaptability, and
Uh, that is so dumb.
oh
Yeah,
man.
Dark
Yeah,
Souls 2 for me. Oh, sorry. Continue.
oh no, I was just saying that Dark Souls 2 has a lot of great ambitions. Some
It
that I wish
does.
they would have carried on. Some of them they did, but I
Mhm.
wish stuff like life gems. Well, that's the kind of thing they did sort of carry on. And but I like the design of the life gems themselves. You hold it up, you break it, it makes a nice little noise, and
Yeah.
your health slowly increases. I love that, but they kind of just they took all that special charm away because in Sekiro you have these little pellets that you just take it and it's just oh your health's going up now. It's just there's really no
Mhm.
special sound that goes with it, and I think Eldering has an equivalent, but I never used it.
Yeah, I really like, and that's a video I'm hoping to get to this year, is why I still play Dark Souls 2, because I hate it so much and I love it so much. I think it has probably one of, if not like blasphemy incoming, I think it has my favorite early game of all the Souls games, and I speak no hyperbole when I say that. I really think it has one of my favorite early games, but it has the worst mid and late game
Hmm.
of all of the whole series. It is just it feels like the game starts out being kind of like fun and interesting and new. You know, the whole enemy thing. Oh, you're fighting a bunch of enemies. Well, just don't lock on. You'll be fine. Like legitimately, that was the thing that you said that Nameless King taught you to run out of attacks.
Hmm.
Dark Souls 2 was my you can sidestep and you can run out of some attacks, partially because of the whole ADP thing. But also it was the game that said, "Hey, with the whole lock-on feature, why would you give control to a game that is actively trying to kill you?" Because you know how Dark Souls lock-on will act up all the time.
Oh yes,
And
that's
so I'm like, you're right. Why would I let Dark Souls, a game that specifically says it wants me dead, and say, here, you can control how my movement goes? I'm like, what if we threw you off a cliff? Ah, dang.
one aspect that never gets discussed that I thought was very underrated was the part at the end where you have to kill enemies near the giant statues in order for them to open up
Yeah,
doors.
with their soul goes into it. Yeah, I thought that was kind of a neat way to do it.
And there's one part where you have to be mindful about where you're killing enemies because if you kill them near a statue, it'll open up the door and release more enemies. And I
Hmm.
love that. I wish we saw that again, but unfortunately
Yeah,
we don't. And I
right.
think maybe
Yeah, I think it was beginning of Drangleic Castle, or like close to the King's Door bonfire, is what you're talking about. There's the really dark room, and there's all these like these soldiers that are kneeling with their spears up, and then if you kill them too close to the giant statues, they'll open the door and a ruined sentinel will come out. And that's always really annoying because not only does the ruined sentinel come out, but that door stays open permanently. So from then on out, you have to fight any stone soldiers you wanted to and a ruined sentinel. So yeah, that was bad.
Elden Ring brings this interesting challenge in the hero graves where you have to draw enemies, these shadowed enemies, into the light so you can actually kill them. I really love that. I need to finish the hero's grave that actually has a lot of it because it's a blast. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but I'm so
I have
glad they
no.
introduced a feature like that.
Yeah, I need to actually play Elden Ring someday. I have only, dabbled in it for probably like 5 hours maybe of actively trying to progress. But I was like, wait a minute, I am playing so many other things. Why would I also, play a game that everybody loved? And so I was like, I will wait until I can give it my full undivided attention.
Um,
Um,
so going back to Sir Alone, so what if someone came up to you and said, "Oh, I don't know why you're complaining. Just overpower yourself and just blaze through it."
um, I mean, I think that was more or less the problem
Hmm.
with Sir Alan is I was at as plus 10 on my weapon. I'm weird. I don't usually upgrade armor because it's Dark Souls and armor unless you're like going nutty and stacking armor, it generally doesn't seem to matter as far as like breakpoints are concerned. Have you ever heard that term breakpoints in games?
Referring to what?
Referring to damage numbers that you take. So like let's say you have 200 health and there's an enemy attack that does 150 damage. No matter what, you can only take two of that before you die. So let's say you put on some armor that makes it so that it reduces that damage to 100 damage. How many attacks can you now take?
Hmm.
Still two. You haven't broken in, you haven't changed your damage breakpoint. And Dark Souls, because of how damage is done and how chunky it is, you could kind of consider it around a lot of those damage breakpoints. Like Overwatch is, I've been playing a lot recently, and that game is kind of designed around breakpoints where Kiriko, one of the new heroes, if she gets a headshot, she does 120 damage. Most DPS champs have 200 health. So no matter what, unless it's some of the fringe DPS characters, if you two tap them with headshots, they will die. Then, but of course, that's when healing and healers and self healing get into the mix, because then you have to be like, okay, how many things do they have to do before they can ignore the damage breakpoint
Mm-hmm.
of being two shot and instead being three shot, four shot, whatever, and those all being headshots makes it even harder. It's a big mess. But I think that Dark Souls, because of the way that damage is dealt, and the fact that you're not really receiving healing until you heal, uh, your it feels like putting on armor can give you maybe one extra attack. I found myself in both enjoying, as well as um, you know, I found myself enjoying a lot more with the Souls games when I put on light armor and run around with a really big weapon instead of putting around heavy armor, carrying a small weapon and a shield. I find a lot more fun in just wear light armor and carry around a big sword. Speak softly, carry a big stick. Uh,
So
and hmm?
so your play style is to go full throttle. Do you just kind of level up, and do you just keep leveling up, or do you have a cap?
Generally, I don't usually play with caps, because 9 times out of 10, I just have some build, like generally like a specific weapon I want to use. Like one of my most recent Dark Souls 1 playthroughs, I wanted to use Smo's Hammer, and that takes like 60 strength if I have it memorized correctly, or 50 strength. So I had to at least do that, but I was also playing a kind of tanky dude, so I had investment in vitality and yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't generally play with caps, and but that was the thing. So going back to all of this rewinding was, I was like level 170, 180 when I was fighting Sir Alan. I don't think it was 170, 180. I don't remember my exact level, unfortunately, but it was over 100, and probably over 140 at least. Um, I would still get 1 to 2 shot by him. So why?
Hmm.
Why does he do this? It was very odd, and I think that was why I didn't love fighting against him, is because it didn't feel like there was any effective way to mitigate damage. Actually, going back to that, life gems are a good lesson in damage breakpoints,
Hmm.
because if you normally get two shot by something, but you have a life gem running, you now are in three shot range
Yeah.
instead of two shots. That was actually something that you could do with life gems. But yeah, a lot of Alon's stuff, it just felt like, all right, play this perfectly, and there were some times where I was like, okay, that felt kind of cool to dodge, but for the most part, I don't know. It just didn't feel the same as like other bosses that I've been like, the bosses you finish, you set that controller down, and you go, whoa, that was so cool.
Yeah, that heart throb is addicting, huh?
Yeah, for me, I distinctly uh is language permitted?
Oh, go nuts! We're I think we're well past the
15-second mark.
Yeah, yeah.
I distinctly remember the second I killed Sirlon, pushing back from my computer and saying, "Good fucking riddance." So if that tells you kind of how I felt during that fight, that's really what it is.
Yeah, you have to forgive me because whenever we're talking about playstyles, my brain immediately goes to like Soul Level 1 kind of playstyle.
Yeah, no, I
So
enjoy Dark Souls, but I don't hate myself entirely. Oh,
but it's just the way I say certain things, I might just it's probably coming from a restriction standpoint. So if you ever need to kind of jump in saying, "Hey, man, you're talking from a very limited playstyle that doesn't really apply here," so just definitely let me know because I'm really bad about that. I've done that in a few reviews where I was complaining about something like, "Oh, you can't run out of this attack. The running out of this attack doesn't feel very great." And then I've
just level your health. I can't.
I
We're
know,
talking about the same thing, but you're from Mars and I'm from Jupiter. Like,
yeah. But all right. What did you have any other examples? I have 5 boss examples for bad RNG if you wanted to But
Um, yeah, so I guess well yeah, if we're so rewinding all the way back to where we started with good RNG, bad RNG, and variation. So what I think of I'll go on to this and then yeah, I would like to hear your examples.
mm,
Is I think that randomness and RNG in general in games there's a lot of factors between implementation, um, frequency, and as well as player expectation is a huge part of it. In heavily skill based games, like let's say I love playing Guitar Hero,
mm-hmm.
and if there was a mode that said 50% of the time that you would have hit a note, you don't. I would say, what the hell? What I want to hit my notes. Why would I play the mode that says I know you're good at this, but we've decided that you're not? And so that would be that would be aggravating. But when I go into a Pokemon game, I understand. Oh, and that's also another thing is accessibility to both the dice rolls and the RNG itself, as well as like you said, tools
Mm-hmm.
to avoid being forced to do that. When I boot up a Pokemon game, my Pokemon can get critical strikes. The enemy's Pokemon can get critical strikes. I have to consider that, especially in Nuzlocking. That's a huge thing. Play around the crit. Um, and so, but if it was like, oh yeah, just the enemy can crit you, I'd be like, why? What do they do differently? Can their Pokemon just see the weak points on mine, and
Mm-hmm.
mine are just blind? I don't get it. What's going on? And so yeah, player expectation is a huge part. Like I said, I play Yu-Gi-Oh, and I was playing against a friend a few days ago, and I lost with a relatively modern deck. I'm gonna might be speaking a little bit of lingo here, but I think I will try to simplify it as best I can. I was playing a relatively modern meta deck against a couple friends. We were doing kind of a battle royale, going around the table, and my deck, constructed in the year of our Lord 2022, was beaten by Time Wizard, a card printed in 2003.
Hmm.
Yeah, because Time Wizard is a card that says flip a coin. If heads, destroy all cards that your opponent controls, or all monsters your opponent controls. If tails, destroy all monsters that you control. The person who activated the Time Wizard. Um, and So I had used all my resources, my tools to avoid the RNG on getting everybody else out of the table. So it was just me and this and the last player, and he was able to use Time Wizard, and I no longer had the tools to avoid it, so I just had to leave the rest up to fate, and I lost.
Hmm.
And so I got to watch as my field was cleared, and I was attacked for game by freaking Time Wizard. There is
Wow.
no more humbling experience. If there are any Yu-Gi-Oh players listening, you are free to flame me in the comments, but that is kind of how it worked.
The Time
So
Wizard. That sounds familiar because my
it
cousin. The
was
only.
a classic card, yeah.
Let's see. Might be. Oh, okay. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah, the little
Yeah,
clock-looking guy.
you'll recognize. He was in the anime a bunch. He was used by Yugi, I think. There was this whole like how the anime made up the rules as they went. And Yugi had the I think it was not Yugi, it was Joey. He had a baby dragon, but then he called Time Wizard correct, so that let him summon an older, bigger dragon, and that's not how that works at all.
Have you ever played Forbidden Memories for PS1?
I want to get that game so much. I know it's really popular in speedrunning. When I say popular, I mean torturous. People have like multi-hundred-hour speedruns of that game to like get all the cards. But I definitely want to get that for the PS1 because I've heard that it is pretty cool.
It is
Um,
really cool. Me and my cousin played it back in the day. I think he actually got it twice accidentally because his mother wasn't sure which one to get, and and so the game it has really fun battling music, and the dialogue is actually pretty good from what I remember. And I actually have a copy still. I need to throw it in sometime. And there's a feature that I felt like it was way out of its. It felt like it was ahead of its time. You get to, so typically you press X to attack a card, but if you press square, I think it is square instead, it'll actually show a 3D animation of the monsters attacking.
That's pretty cool.
Yes, I loved that when I was a kid. I mean, I still think it's really cool because it's just imagine just back then, just to see these monsters
Mhm.
fight. And it's an option. It's totally optional. You don't have to do it. And
You know,
I don't.
to this day, most Yu-Gi-Oh players desperately wish that we could have like holograms of the of dual monsters as we play them, because that's everybody saw that in the anime. They were like, so when are they making this? And
Right.
we've been waiting 20 years. Come on.
And there's another feature in Forbidden Memories where you can grab a card and it has a number on the card. If you type this number into the game, you get that monster in the game, and there's no other way to get that monster in the game other than putting that code in from the card.
Yeah, every card, even to this day, does have a card serial number. Like I'm looking right now at a copy of the Bestial Lubellion, printed just like a couple months ago, and yeah, it has a code in the bottom left corner. I don't think they use those for modern games like Master Duel, but I really wish they would, because it's such an easy system. Just make it so your physical cards can translate over to the digital game.
I
But
wonder.
no, Konami wants money, I guess.
I wonder if someone's made a compilation on YouTube of them showing off all the possible unlocked Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
I think they have, I mean, that's more or less what the speed run of Forbidden Memories is to get all of the cards, and pretty much it does very much come down to RNG. And so pulling the last like secret rare of the game is always like this crazy point of like, okay, this is where we decide how long the speed run's actually gonna be, because you're getting cards. Every time you get to get a new pack, you can just get cards and cards and cards and cards. But
This is.
then,
Oh, sorry.
oh no, that's it.
This is implying. I'm looking at some of the video listings here, and some of these are applying. Some of these are applying that. Sorry. Some of these are implying that you can get all 722 cards organically in the game. So I don't know if that's
Mhm.
just clickbait, but I've never
No,
seen any of these. Huh?
that sounds like the right number.
Okay. That's a
Yeah.
lot. I don't remember that many cards being in the game. I only remember
Oh
maybe 50 at least.
man, I don't know what to tell you, but Yu-Gi-Oh's at 10,000 cards now.
Jeez.
10,000 like individual unique cards are in the game at this point. And I think of like different printings of cards, there's like 30 or 40,000. So like different rarities and whatnot. But yeah, there's over 10,000 cards. And like a year or two ago, when they did have the 10,000th card, they created a special, like a special edition card called 10,000 Dragon, that I think still fetches a price of over $1,000. Um, because it is extremely rare to get.
I think only 50 actually have animations.
Oh, that could be
I
it.
think that's what I was thinking about. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that we keep getting off this topic. I
We're
keep thinking
getting
about
off
things I
topic
want to
is my
talk
middle
about.
name.
I'm sorry.
Getting off topic is my middle name.
Yeah, it's just what happens in these podcasts.
But yeah, so going back to RNG, I think that, like I said, all those things that are worth consideration. Um, and yeah, there are times where RNG just feels really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the time that it feels the worst is not when you randomly. I don't even think it's when you randomly get crit necessarily in games where you can get critically struck. I think the worst time is when something happens that creates an inescapable scenario for you. Like, I don't know if it can happen. Actually, it probably can happen, at least with Elden Ring bosses. But when a boss layers mechanics in a way that you realize that, to position around one, you have to get hit by the other, and to not get hit by that one, you have to position back in the first one. There is no winning because both of those fired off at the same time. Congratulations, you lose.
So
Sorry.
here's a scenario. All right, so in the at Firelink, you have all those draglings on the right side. Now, of course, you can always take your time and kill them all, but if you decide to run past them, you go up the stairs, but you don't take a left. You go straight to collect that little item. I think it's a is it a ring of sacrifice? I think maybe.
Yeah, the jump, to go under the bridge and then like squeeze, like sidle your way down the pillars
Well,
of the bridge, and yeah, it's a ring of
well,
sacrifice.
I meant above, where after,
Go
but
above,
if you
it's
go past the door where that rat is,
yeah, it's a soul of a lost undead.
okay. No, you remember items a lot better than I can.
Bro,
Uh,
I have this game memorized front to back. It's weird, bruh.
yeah, I need to freshen up on that. I was thinking about just doing like a whole level analysis, finding every single item according to the guide, and finding all the enemies and clearing them out. But anyway, so imagine if you run past the steps without killing all the draglings, and you collect that soul, and so all of a sudden all these draglings are coming after you, and they somehow didn't fall off, and then you just get pummeled. Is that bad RNG from the game or bad RNG from you?
I think, well, there's no real randomness to be to be seen there. I guess the only randomness there is
Yeah,
how the hell did those draglings let you get past?
yeah.
Um,
Well, I do it all the
that's the only
time.
random. Yeah, that's like the only randomness to be had there. But you were shown the threat. These are the undead. I don't remember what the basic ones. I don't think they were draglings. That's demon souls. I forgot what they were called. The basic undead
I
in
just call
Dark
them
Souls 1.
draglings,
Yeah,
whatever.
that works pretty well as a name. So you are shown that there's, I think, six draglings that are guarding the way. One of them has a shield and spear. One of them has fire bombs. One of them's got an axe. One of them has a short sword. I think two of them have a short sword.
Hmm.
This is what you are facing. If you run past them, there is a narrow walkway.
Yep.
We will let you do the math of what's going to happen if you want to try that. So I hope your weapon is able to do a lot of vertical attacks, because you're going to plink off the wall if you try to fight them up there.
Yep.
So I wouldn't even, I don't think that would really be necessarily an RNG thing,
Yeah.
because like Dark Souls is actually really good at doing that, where it lets you dig your own grave a
Hmm.
lot of the time. There's I think Demon Souls, one of the didn't have aggro walls for enemies, and in the Swamp of Despair, or whatever it was called, the Swamp of Sorrows. I almost called it Swamp of Despair. Wow, the Swamp of Sorrows, the very first one, the Valley of Plague or something like that. If you run past every enemy in the level, whatever you drew aggro from, there's a bridge at the very end where there's the really big birdmen. There's one of the really big ones who blocks the bridge entirely, and you pretty much either have to get lucky and dodge around him or kill him. So if you try to sit there and have an extended fight with him, you will have a turnaround and you will get a brief 2, 3, 5 seconds of looking back and going, oh, I really screwed the pooch this time, didn't I? As you watch dozens of enemies flood onto the bridge behind you. You dug your own grave there. You knew what you were doing. Enjoy your consequences. There's the best phrase I could use for what you've described. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Exactly. I like the in the catacombs in Dark Souls 3. I love gathering all the skeletons. There's like probably 20 skeletons you can get chasing after you, and you get them on that bridge. You turn around and you snap the rope on the bridge, and they all fall down.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that uh, that places where, yeah, I think so. Like, but back to where I was saying, with randomness though,
Hmm.
is I think that bosses on, you can tell me if there's any bosses. I'm trying to think of a few that I've experienced that with, where layered mechanics can be exceptionally unlucky. I know it actually
Yeah.
happens a lot in MMOs like WoW. There's been a couple bosses throughout the years. I think they've gotten better about it over the years. But there are some very unlucky combinations of mechanics where it's like, oh, if the dragon is doing this fire breath on 1/3 of the room, but there's an AoE that's going to cover the other 1/3 2/3 of the room,
Hmm.
sorry, you're dead. Sorry, we rolled some dice and decided you die. Uh, and so that's like, I guess, where bad RNG, because where it's like well, you want me to do something, but I can't do something. That is bad RNG. Or of course, lacking game clarity is like lacking clarity in the RNG. I think is another big part where you go from the zone of good RNG to bad RNG. So, like you said, randomness and boss patterns is good because yes, the boss when you see them, wind back and pull their arms together, they're gonna, when you see Melina, pull her sword back, she's about to waterfowl you. Get your dancing shoes on.
Mm-hmm.
But if imagine if all of a sudden she was able to like put down a zone that of like fire that engulfed the whole arena but a straight line in front of her, and then she could potentially waterfowl while there was fire all around the arena.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Yeah.
You just die. And so that would be horrible. You're like, well, what did you want me to do? That is where the lacking clarity comes in. I think lacking game clarity is like one of the worst sins a game can commit.
Yeah.
Because I think difficulty, you can make a game as difficult as you want, but make it clear what you're losing to, and that
Yes.
is nine times out of 10 that will fix most bad design. I think Riot in League of Legends has gotten really bad about this lately, where there's some champions you'll die to, and it'll say, "Oh yeah, this did this much damage." You're like, "Okay, how do I see that coming?" You don't. It just happens. Oh yeah, it's like a frame. Like you have like 2 frames to respond to it. Could I have more? No, no. Uh, and so there are some things you can get good at, really good at predicting. But as I have worded it to my friends, you shouldn't have to be a Jedi to beat certain things in any game.
Yeah.
That is the best way I can put it.
This a good example for that is Manus, the dark magic attacks. You got 3 of them. You got the one that circles around you, and you got the one that's a spray, a close range spray, and the other one's rain. Now, these attacks are not well telegraphed, in my opinion. They look very similar, and they're very sudden. So basically, so
And they're
they're
dark magic in an all black arena. That also doesn't help.
well, I mean, it's not too bad visually. It's not
Yeah,
visually
purple.
jarring like some attacks in Elden Ring, like Malekith. Malekith is very visually jarring, and there's one attack from the Draconic Tree Sentinel that's also jarring, but it's just one attack. Um, so it doesn't really look that bad in my opinion. So these dark magic attacks, you can get the pendant and just nullify all of it. But if there's a possible way, when I was practicing Manus for the Soul Level 1 run, there's something telling me, something telling me that there was a very possible way to avoid these magic spells. So
Mhm.
I just kept at it, and I already knew how to avoid the circling dark magic spell. You just have to simply run towards Manus because it doesn't go all the way to him, it eventually vanishes.
Mhm.
And so the spray was my biggest obstacle, which eventually led to the rain being my biggest obstacle. And so my strategy was to plan on that spray happening every time. If I saw his staff raise, I'm like, okay, I need to put in my brain that he's going to do the spray. But so if he all of a sudden had the circulating magic spell, I'm like, okay, well, I'm already close to him, so I can just take care of that. I can get a lot of hits in. But if he does the rain became the most problematic because I had to kind of run a little bit forward and then back. And I wasn't really sure if I found the right consistency for that still. I don't know if I got lucky or I actually found a good strategy. I think it was just one of those moments where you're like, okay, I'm close to getting it done and I'm not going to start over. I'm not doing a no hit run or anything like that. But and so the
Mhm.
spray, the interesting thing about the spray is when it happens, you got to act fast. You got to roll. Sometimes I incidentally just jump out of the way, and it worked
Mhm.
consistently. And so I'm not really expecting everybody to do that because it's a very specific way, and it just does. Sometimes it doesn't even feel intentional doing it that way. It's almost like the game's telling you, "Hey, use this item we use in the game. I mean, use this item that we put in the game to nullify those magic spells." And then you, but if you're stubborn like I am and don't want to use that item, and you just find a very iframe perfect bypass. So but it's not RNG if there's a consistent way to do it. So
Mhm.
this is kind of leading into bad game design, but would you even consider that bad game design if the
I
developers intentionally put an item in there to nullify it?
Um, I think that I guess I would call that Band-Aid design, where
Mm-hmm.
they were like, okay, this I could see where this would be frustrating, but we want the boss to have this power, so we will put a Band-Aid that the player can find, so it won't get overly frustrating while the boss can still look cool. Is kind of what I would call
Okay.
that silver pendant. But I know that attack. I rarely get the silver pendant because I'm thinking back and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot the silver pendant exists. I've beat Manus like at least 2 or 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
throughout various playthroughs. Um, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing. I should probably think about using that in my next playthrough, and then I completely forget about it again. But I guess that it's um I guess that attacks like that I don't necessarily think because he does have the staff raise, and I think that the contingency like if the player makes contingency plans,
Mm-hmm.
that is an okay form of game design. I think that things that have similar telegraphs are kind of like okay, it's a little it can be a little iffy where when you get into the design space. But I think that if it has a similar telegraph, it gets the player to start to create contingency plans.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, you would get close if you saw the ring outside, awesome, and you just start wailing away on Manus. But if you saw him start to put his arm back to do the big swipe of magic,
Yes.
then you would get up to a run and do your big jump and roll thing, which actually looks really cool, dodging some attacks
Mm-hmm.
when you see something and you just barely jump at the last second. Oh, it looks so
Did
cool.
you see my footage for Menace? Have you seen it yet?
I have not gotten to see that yet. I was out and about for most of the
Oh,
day.
okay.
Um, but yeah, I think that um when you're getting into the realm of like uh you know difficult game design and bad game design are not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I am very firmly in the camp that bad game design is either unclear what the player should be doing or could be doing. Not it doesn't always need to be told to you, hey, when he does this, immediately do this, and that's the answer. But there should be some like it should be semi-intuitive where it's like, okay, that makes sense. Like the old adventure games, like, oh, get a cat out of a tree, so I need a ladder. Oh, the ladder doesn't work. Oh, I have to get a gun and shoot down the tree branch. What?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of logic where it's just like that's not intuitive. But I think that intuitive counterplay is a big part of good game design, and fun counterplay is a good part of game design. Things that rule of cool, if it looks cool, there's a good chance that it actually feels fun to do when you're playing against it. There's a kind of a design concept that I, ironically enough, learned from Riot Games on one of their dev blogs about as, with, and against. And that is, not all of this applies to single player games, but quite a bit of it does. So when you're designing a game or a character in a game, it should feel fun to play as. If you're the person on it, it should feel good to play. If you're playing with it on your team, it should be good to have on feel good to have on your team. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm glad that they picked that. It's never a bad time to pick them. And against. And most people are like, well, there's no good way to design against. Everybody hates dying. Yeah, everybody hates dying, but there's times where you can die and you're like, that was my fault. Where you can at least reasonably say, oh yeah, that I screwed up. I saw the telegraph. I should have done this. I knew I had to do this, and I just completely misplayed. I died. That is on me. And then there's times where you're like, oh, this guy just appeared out of nowhere. I had no way of seeing him coming, and he dealt 4,000 damage in 2 seconds. Okay, that's I guess that's my fault. I should have not left the base. Obviously.
What is your opinion on the energy bolt? Because there's no item in the game that other than a shield to really prevent it prevent you from taking damage.
Which boss's
Oh,
energy
sorry,
drink?
the Four Kings. It's that little homing spell that chases
Yes,
you for like 10 seconds, 15, or I think it's longer than that. But
I think it is. I think that is it's a bit of an aggravating piece of design, but it's not bad. I think it is it's something that forces you to use your running,
mm-hmm.
or of course, change up your build. You've seen the NG plus strat of the Four Kings. Get Havel's armor, get a big weapon, and just tank it because they do 90% magic damage. You just walk up in Havel's armor and you take like 3 damage from all the spells. It's really funny. Yeah, and so
Tanking. It makes my ears bleed.
exactly, but that's a strategy that some people use, and I mean, if it works.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do think that spell, yeah, because like I say, I mostly am playing in light armor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that it is a spell that encourages a lot more movement, and I think that inadvertently, even though it doesn't look like it, it is designed to keep you away from what has probably been the what has been your most effective strategy up to that point of stand behind the boss and stick them with the pointy end. You know how that works on about 90% of Dark Souls bosses.
Mm-hmm.
Just find their backside or their back foot and then just stick your sword into them until they wind up their stomp attack and then dodge. Well, the Four Kings can't really have a stomp attack. So the only thing they can do if you're behind them is slowly turn around, which you can just track, or they can do their big like AoE burst, which you can just run away from. So to keep you from defaulting to that, they put this thing that chases you. So if you want to stand behind them and try and stay in one spot, you're gonna get beamed by the big magic beam, and you're gonna be like, "What the hell? This is awful design!" And throw your controller and kill somebody. But that's not. I think that it serves a purpose that's hard to see. It's kind of like the Mario Kart Blue Shell.
Mm-hmm.
Why should we give the person in last place an item that affects somebody in first? Why does the person in last place get to ruin my race when they weren't going to win anyways? Because it keeps the game tight.
Yeah.
It keeps the race close, where there will be upset wins and there will be times, and they've added counterplay to the blue shell now. So it's just a fun fact of the
That's
day.
actually a really good point. Actually, never thought of it that way.
Yeah, but that's what the blue shell served the purpose of in Mario Kart, is to keep the race from getting to be too much of a steamroll. Because if you get one person that gets really good at driving, and they take the optimal route every time, then what do? You
Mm-hmm.
can't just, if two people are trying to take the optimal route, then they just kind of, then it's just whoever gets to the inside corner first. And I guess sure, but with the blue shell, it makes it so there is some variance. And I think, talking about randomness, Mario Kart's probably one of the best things you could talk about randomness, where you're never going to get anything outside of a specific parameter of items, and there will be variance, and you will get better items the further back you are. But going back to, like, once again, there are tools to beat the randomness.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in first place, you have a chance to get the horn item. I think it was just added for 8, but there's an item called the horn, and if you use it, it'll make a big AoE around just you, and it seems pretty worthless on the surface, but it destroys any projectile near you. So if you have a horn, you hold on to that for dear life. That blue shell gets close and does, how the blue shell does that menacing little circle overhead before it dives onto you.
Yeah.
You blow the horn and it'll blow up the blue shell and you won't get hit by it. Also, if you're an actual ninja, you can use a mushroom to boost out of a blue shell. It is extremely difficult, but if you look at the blue shell's animation, you see it do a little swirl above you, and then it actually has to dive down and collide with you or the ground before making the explosion. So what you can do is it's like frame perfect, if not like a 1 to 2 frame forgiveness window, where when it does that circle and it tilts to dive down, you pop a mushroom, and it won't track far enough, and it will explode behind you as you pull away.
Okay.
It is really difficult to do though.
But yeah,
Um,
oh, sorry. Did you?
just getting back to the whole idea of like luck is can be good in a lot of games, a lot of
Mm,
situations, and it can be even better when skill can circumvent luck.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so
Yeah. That point you made about the blue shell making things tighter, it really applies very well to the energy bolt because it does make things very tight in that fight. Unless you're tanking and you're just absorbing everything.
man, what do you mean? They have magic attacks? Oh, I couldn't tell.
The four kings, I just tanked him. That was easy. I'm like, oh, okay, gotta ignore that. uh, but
Uh,
but yeah, the energy bolt when it's chasing after you is very thrilling. And for a while, I was thinking, man, this is probably the worst attack. And at just imagine that attack, but worse in the final boss for Elden Ring. I won't spoil it or anything like that, but
I've heard a lot of things about the Elden Beast, and people are like, "What is this from Soft? The hell is this?"
so whenever you get to it, I definitely want to talk about this topic about this particular design again, just to see how you feel about it. Because there is an item in the game that helps with it. However, when it comes to stubborn people like me that wants to defeat the boss without taking damage, it's like it's intentionally designed for you to take damage.
hmm Yeah, I think that's another big piece of game design that is actually not just generally not good,
Hmm.
is guaranteed damage. Like you
Yeah.
cannot complete this without without taking damage.
Yeah.
And so like big unavoidable AoEs are, in MMOs they make sense because your healers need something to do, and if everybody just got ultra cracked at a boss, then the healers they could just ignore having healers and add more DPS. um so that's, that makes sense why they have, big AoEs. But in a lot of, these skill-based action games, having completely unavoidable damage, like I know that Smelter Demon, it's weirdly frustrating even when it's not that much, and even if it's not that impactful, when he's burning you because you were close to him. Hello, I have a sword. What do you want me to do? I do you just want me to just don't get hit, lol? Like that's
Hmm.
the I have a sword. It, it said, oh, looks like you didn't play a mage or an archer. Dang. guess
um,
you're gonna guess you're gonna get burned.
well, for the longest time, I thought all the games were designed. Well, most of the games actually are designed where you don't have to take damage for all the fights because it's been done. People have videos.
Mhm.
However, there has been there's a boss in Elden Ring called Moog, and he's got this attack called Nihil, and you can drink this flask that nullifies most damage, but you still take damage, and there's no way to avoid it. It's scripted to always happen. The only way to technically avoid it is just to overpower him and kill him before he does it, but that's not fully, in my opinion, not fully exploring the boss. So, I mean, you know what I mean?
He's the blood guy, right?
I'm sorry?
He's the blood dude, right?
Right, yeah. He's the guy that he's basically the devil, it looks like to me.
Yeah, because all I remember of seeing him was a video of somebody that said, well, when you get summoned in to help someone, but you're a mage. So it shows this guy. He's doing all this stuff. He's buffing up his sword. He's getting ready to fight Moog. And then this guy with a mage build, he just kneels down and fires one shot at Moog and instantly kills him. And the guy just kind of turns and looks at him like,
Uh huh.
dude, what?
Now, the only attack I can think of that's similar to that is the Moon Presence from Bloodborne, where he drains all your health. But I don't know if there's a way to consistently avoid that. I was looking at it just now to see to see someone that was fighting him for 3 minutes, and it looks like it never happened. So I don't know if it's one of those things where you just kind of hope it doesn't.
Are
But
you talking about Moog, or are you talking about
Moon Presence
Moon Presence?
from Bloodborne,
Yeah.
have you fought him before?
I have not. I've actually never rolled credits on Bloodborne before.
Oh,
Yeah, that is a game that is in my roster of things that I need to play through. I have only of FromSoft games. I have only completed Dark Souls 1, 2, 3.
okay,
Yeah, I
gotcha.
think I mentioned that. I think I mentioned that. I might have. I don't know, but
Sorry,
last
it's
time.
it's hard to keep track of because there's so many people have different, completions of the games. Like Glencairn Gamer, I believe he has only completed Dark Souls 1, if I'm remembering correctly. No, wait, sorry. No, he's only played Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3. He's never played anything else other than that.
Yeah, I am on. I have multiple completions of Dark Souls 1 and 2. One, I probably have like a disgusting amount of completion. I think of at least five, probably more.
What?
Um, but no, it's not even five. What, seven? No,
So
I don't even want to think about it. But then Dark Souls 2, I know I have four playthroughs.
I wanted to ask
That
you about Gwen, the final boss of Dark Souls. So I don't know if you saw how I fought him in the end, but I basically exploited the stagger that he has. You attack him twice and he staggers, and
yes.
what I basically did was I would stagger him, circle back around to his back, stagger him again. We would be face to face, and you can basically just do that until he's dead. And I never realized that until the Soul Level 1 run. I know it's not really. I know it's a big exploit, and I probably should learn the rhythm of his attack strikes, but it was really
Oh,
fascinating because I never seen anybody else do it.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen. There's been some very creative ways. I don't know if you've seen the video of uh, Dark Souls 1, but it's all Gwyn's.
Hmm.
And every single enemy was replaced with Gwyn in a
Yeah.
randomizer, which is yikes.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think he might have had something. It was like a except he created this technique where it was like you parry him, you stab him, and then you by drinking an Estus flask or having an empty one and doing the empty Estus animation, it still has the exact same timing. And you do that animation right when you get out of that animation, you parry, and like 9 times out of 10, he will be dead center middle of an attack that you can parry, and it will parry every time.
Really?
Yeah, and so
Huh.
he found it was a super consistent way that he could get a parry off
I love finding
on
stuff like
Gwyn.
that.
Uh, yeah, finding timings that work really well in games,
Hmm.
where certain things happen. Or I also love burst windows, and for more MMOs, but classes that have burst windows where all of your best damage cooldowns are on like a 1.5 minute cooldown, and so you pop all your buffs, and then at the same time, and you watch your character turn into this unkillable god for 30 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever, and then you go back to waiting on the cooldown.
It's nice finding that perfect weapon that has the perfect timing for the charge attack for for like an R2 charge attack. Like for the Nameless King, I had like the perfect axe charge. So whenever I charge attacked him and I recovered from that, I was able to dodge and then do it again. Yeah, it seems like it. I don't know if I just got really comfortable at the end or something like that, but I found myself using charge attacks where the boss should be getting more aggressive, but that for some reason axes have always had like the best pacing for bosses for my playstyle.
Yeah, I think I recently, at least, yeah, for that video, for my Dark Souls video, I did a character with Great Axe because I love the Great Axe. It feels
Hmm.
so good. But yeah, there's a there's a lot of fun weapons that you can find when you get like their timings, or especially weapons that have movements in Dark Souls games that have good hitboxes. Dark Souls 2. Um, Dark Souls 2 is. Have you seen the hitboxes in Dark Souls 2?
Oh
Where
yes, I
the
mean,
Fume Knight can stab the air and you could be like 90 degrees to the right of him, and it goes, nope,
hmm
you got it. And you're like, what?
it's hard to believe at one point where Dark Souls 2 was the newest game, and people just kind of accepted it at the
Mhm.
time. But now that there's several games around it, people are like, ah, yeah, screw Dark Souls. I'm not playing that again.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a weird soft spot for Dark Souls 2. It's janky, but it has so many cool things in it. But yeah, so back to that with the Souls games that have good hitboxes, whichever one that is to you.
Mm.
um there's some animations, and people will make like these montages on like TikTok and whatnot, where instead of using dodges, they're using their skill animations, and it just looks like this insane like this anime boss fight where I don't remember what boss it was in Elden Ring, but this person, they use a attack. I don't remember what weapon they're using, but they kneel down and they duck under a blade that goes over their head, and then they do a jumping attack that comes out of that, and it jumps over the blade, sweeping the ground where they were. You're like, oh my gosh, that is so perfect. Those are good hitboxes, and they get a really good hit on the boss that leaves them open for a visceral attack. Uh, Something cool stuff like that. And I love when counterplay in games looks cool and feels cool, and that is sometimes, the best way to tell a player that they're playing the game correctly is that they feel amazing when they play the game right, or
Hmm.
how you are envisioning them playing it. And so that is, that's kind of I talked a little bit about that with Dishonored, where I do believe that Dishonored, even though it is seem like a slow paced stealth game, it is at its best and you look your coolest when you're teleporting around, killing groups of 5+ enemies in one fell swoop because of how you chained your all your powers together. And so uh same sort of idea with that, using things outside of what seem like, the basic tools to do something, instead, getting creative with it. I love it.
Do you? What is your opinion on cryptic solutions?
um I think if there are obvious solutions, or even, like semi non-obvious solutions, cryptic solutions are okay. I think that having some stuff that's cryptic, not unclear, unclear and cryptic are two different things.
Hmm.
If it says like, so like, let's say there's a mechanic you learned in the game, um, and uh it's like, okay, you've been using this, but you get into a boss fight and you're super fixated on your usual boss rhythm, and this boss looks impervious. It has no metal plating sticking up. It's just covered head to toe, and this thing is definitely not going to be phased by your little sword. But then you remember earlier in the game that walls with cracks in them um can be broken. And then you notice that the boss has a charge attack, so you try standing in front of a wall. He hits the wall. Oh, he cracks it. Oh, if it has a crack in it, I can break it. And those sorts of solutions, I think that's okay.
Hmm.
I think because there's putting tools in the game that can let the solution present itself feels very much like the puzzle game Eureka moment, which is what a lot of people say is like, when you're designing a puzzle game, you have to have good Eureka moments where someone's looking at a puzzle for a long time. Eureka! I figured it out.
What about
uh,
on the original Dark Souls, where you had to, like, the original release of the PS3, and the reason why I'm making that distinction is because when you balled up into the nest in Firelink Shrine, I think it took what 20 seconds for it to
yeah,
finally,
about 15 to 20, maybe even 30 seconds.
and then it was reduced in the remaster. So what about stuff like that? Because is there anything that tells you to sit there and wait?
Um, I think that, yeah, I think that one is kind of getting into, as some people call it, Legend of Zelda territory,
Mm-hmm.
where in like the original Legend of Zelda, you had to drop bombs against every single wall to find the path behind which the entire rest of the game lies down. And it's like, how are you supposed to know? Oh, just drop bombs on walls. The game teaches you can do that. Okay, but not like that. There's nothing directing me. There was nothing telling you, hey, there's a wall that I heard was a little unstable outside of town. Interesting. Absolutely nothing. And yeah, no, I think that Dark Souls would have been better served if there was an NPC that mentioned there's a bird making its, that bird that you flew in on is making its nest up there. How peculiar. I've always wondered if I could go up to that nest and curl up like a ball. Would it treat me like one of its eggs? Guess I would have to wait a long time to find out. Something like that. It's still cryptic. It's like, okay, maybe this guy is just talking crazy. Oh, of course, ending with because all Dark Souls NPCs have to do that.
Hmm.
And um, something like that, where it's like it's an organic in-game way to hint at, hey, maybe check this out. But yeah, I do think that one is a little bit on just that is there's no clarity. Like you're doing all the right things and it's just nothing's happening. Okay. Oh, you just didn't wait 30 seconds. I'm sorry. I bought your video game to play it, not sit there and look at my phone.
Well,
That's that is not why I play your game.
I've recently had my mind changed by watching an episode of regular show. The episode's called Rage Against the TV. And so for a while, I've been thinking, I hate crypto solutions. I hate that this stuff can't be figured out on its own. And when I watched this episode of Regular Show, it reminded me of what Miyazaki said on how he came up with the design philosophy for Dark Souls, where you're stuck in traffic and people are helping you out. And I thought about that a little bit deeper. I thought, well, what if you're having engine trouble? Well, the first thing you think about is, how much is it going to cost to have a mechanic repair it? What if you ask somebody on the road, someone that actually has experience, and they fix it for you, and you didn't have to pay for anything or use anything against your
Mm,
will? And so I was thinking, like these crypto solutions, they're designed like this so a community can come together and connect and figure it out.
I
And
do think, yeah, that does have a point because community was a big part of Dark Souls, and that was
yes,
kind of what, the whole idea of summoning was, Dark Souls oppressive difficulty is, does very much encourage players to say, hey, there is help that you can get. And that's actually one of the things, a lot of the essays that talk about Dark Souls being an allegory for depression. If you feel like you can't beat it, ask for help.
hmm,
That's a cool kind of a cool way to represent that. I don't know if that is the intended interpretation of Dark Souls. Like I said in my video, there is a million and one interpretations of
yes,
Dark Souls, but I do think that the whole you know we're all in this together mentality really does help. And I think that Dark Souls, if it was easy, doesn't wouldn't that wouldn't be there. Or if everything was obvious, yeah, that in that case, I guess there is some point. But then also you have to think servers go down for games.
yes.
Um, Dark Souls will not always be there. Not everybody plays on an internet connection, and so that's also worth thinking is like, is some of the content in your game going to be an accessibility issue? Because if people legitimately cannot find it online, or post to message boards or whatnot, and
Hmm.
they just have an old PS3 that doesn't get messages in game, because they shut down the Dark Souls 1 servers from PS, like the Prepare to Die servers, right?
Oh, they did. I know they shut down Demon Souls. I didn't know they shut down
It might
Dark
have
Souls.
been just Demon Souls, but I thought DS1's servers were offline.
Oh, they were dealing with hackers for PC.
Yeah, I remember that. Still up. I want to see here. Okay, yeah. So the first Dark Souls after that hack, the very first Dark Souls old servers will be down permanently.
Wow.
But remastered is still fine.
Okay.
But yeah, Prepare to Die edition is currently offline. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's
let's say
crazy.
somebody has a PS3 with Prepare to Die edition, and they don't have access to their internet for whatever reason. maybe that could be an issue for them. And so I guess there is, you do have a very good point though. I do think that the community and the camaraderie, but yeah, there's sometimes that somebody just can't get out of their car to ask. There's sometimes that somebody can't get out and ask for help with their engine troubles. This
And
is how it goes sometimes.
it was thanks to the community because on Elden Ring I was looking for this key, and it was a very special hunt. I was like, okay, where in the heck is this key? I'm at the door, and I've been looking all over the place, and so I look. There's a sign. I was looking at signs that messages people are leaving around the door, and I'm just looking at it. And I didn't want to search online. I wanted to explore a good chunk of Elden Ring without going online. And
Hmm.
so I finally find a message where someone points in a direction. I'm like, okay, that's something I can work with. So it wasn't really something organically in the game. It's something just something an online community placed into the game. And I don't know, you know what I mean by organically. It's just something set in the
Yeah,
game. If you ever go offline, you'll never see this message. So it's an online integrated message.
yeah, no, organic interactions with games
I still don't
are
understand the. Oh,
very
sorry.
fun. Organic interactions in games, especially in multiplayer or pseudo multiplayer titles, are very very fun. Where things that weren't necessarily intentionally designed, but they end up being more fun
Mm-hmm.
because of it. So yeah, I think that's a good thing.
The game gives you a map, but for some reason I don't really get it because it doesn't tell you where the key is. Because whenever I got the key and then I look back at the map, I'm like, this map doesn't tell you anything. It has like four blue balls on it. Sorry, four
Yeah,
blue spheres.
no man, that's you after the key hunt, blue balls.
Dang it! I always try to avoid saying balls. Like I just say like a circular object or spheres, and here I go just saying it again. Um,
Balls.
so I find the key through online communication, and you know I really wish that alone would have convinced me. Like, oh, I love this cryptic stuff, but it just this looking deeper into this regular show episode. So have you seen the episode that I'm referring to?
I don't watch regular show. I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay, I got you.
I
So
know. I'm weird.
So regular show is actually one of my favorite shows of all time. It's a really good cartoon, and so these two dudes, one of them's a blue jay, the other one is a raccoon, and they're playing
Uh,
on this. I think this is taking place in the '90s because they don't have any modern day systems. They're
mhm.
playing on something that's probably like Super Nintendo, Nintendo, and it's a game called No One Beats the Hammer, and so they're just dogging out on this game, and they finally get to the final boss, and his name is the Hammer, and they try to attack him with basic punches, and nothing's happening. And they're like, oh my god, this guy's invisible, and then all of a sudden their TV kind of craps out, and so they're panicking, and I'm like, you can relate so much with this episode. Especially being a gamer, about the panic of almost getting something, and then something with the TV kind of goes wrong, and they eventually figure out that they have to hit the boss with furniture. The furniture is his weakness. And so they go around and they're trying to find a TV that they can use. And they're asking all their friends, and they're like, yeah, we got to the hammer. And their friends like, yeah, right, no one gets to the hammer. They're like, yeah, we did, and his weakness is furniture. And he's like, no way. And they're just going around just, and it's a really good, I think it's a really good metaphor about the good spirit of gaming, the core of what makes gaming special. And that really convinced me that a community of gamers getting together and figuring something out is very special. And I think that's what From Software has brought to us, because you can't play something like God of War Ragnarok and be like, oh no, I'm having trouble trying to figure out how to get to the next mission or where to find this item, because the game just basically just points to everything, and God forbid, they keep telling you the solution to puzzles. So it's not like someone's online saying, hey, how do you solve this puzzle, when the NPCs are constantly telling you how to solve it. And so that's why we need games like From Software that brings gamers together to solve something difficult. Because if every game was easy, we won't really have a very interesting community to get ourselves
Mhm.
involved with, in my opinion.
I see, because I see the the point and the idea, and I do agree. I think that uh, you know more or less enforced community is a good thing
Yeah.
for most games, but uh, I don't know. I think there is some points where uh where there does need to be a way to complete the critical path of a game
Hmm.
without being walled off because you don't have the means to make a Google search, or
Yeah.
because some younger players may have parents that are extra strict and don't let them go online, so they have no way of finding it out.
Yeah.
um
That's a good point.
um, and I think that it works really well in From Software's games because of the themes, because of their structure, how they're laid out. I think it works really well there because Vast Worlds, and Vast Worlds, they have many places that many secrets can be. But I think that if that was with every game or a lot of games,
Hmm.
it would lead to a lot of unnecessary frustrations and an
Yeah.
even lower number on that people that have the final achievement thing. Because, like we said, we're both adults and we're both getting older, and there are times where we really do not want to spend the next 2 hours trying to figure out where do I go next, what the heck is going on.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh yeah, you didn't see the wall with like a half inch with like the water leaking out of it ever so slightly, that
Hmm.
looked aesthetic. Oh no, that wasn't aesthetic, you got to hit that with a big weapon
Yeah.
and it'll break it down. You're like, I guess. um People that got 4 minutes a week to play video games don't really want to do that. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, it makes sense. I think both ways. I also would say that um, we were talking about games and communities, cryptic solutions. Oh, there was something that I was like super super pumped to mention. It's all right. I'll remember it at the worst time tonight. Middle of the night, I'm going to shoot out of bed and go, dang it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I mean, like 20 years from now, let's just say someone goes all the way back to Dark Souls. Is if Dark Souls never gets an upgrade, which would be a shame because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that can be added to Dark Souls and upgraded graphically, and just to oh man, it's got to happen one day. I mentioned it on another podcast. I think it was the second one with Twilight, where Dark Souls has to eventually get an upgrade. It just kind of stands on its own as
Mhm.
still being one of the very old looking games, and it just needs a Demon Souls treatment. But
Yeah, I would be very impressed to see a Demon Souls type upgrade to it.
yeah, that would be fascinating. Imagine what I mean, the Silent Demon looks good now. I mean, imagine what he would look like in an upgrade. I mean, you probably look absolutely
Mhm.
terrifying.
Yeah, the yeah, that I would love to see
I mean,
someday,
even the
maybe.
Vanguard looks horrifying in Demon
Mm.
Souls. I mean, I'm surprised
Yeah.
they went that far in detail.
Yeah, they did a lot of really good things with not a lot to work with. Not a lot of those enemies and bosses were super well, like, oh, I would have kind of envisioned it to look like that. The Vanguard being all droopy everywhere when you're
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, no, I can see it. I can, that makes sense. Um, so yeah, I would really appreciate if they did like a Dark Souls trilogy collection or something where all three games got a Demon Souls type treatment.
Yeah, that would be great. It would probably be a while for something like Dark Souls 2 or Dark Souls 3 if they even decide that. But since Dark
Mm,
Souls itself is so iconic, it wouldn't surprise me if they just upgraded that one and left the rest alone.
hmm yeah, I uh I would like to see that, but even then, like, I guess 2 and 3 is where they had slightly better physics, so maybe, yeah, I would like to see it someday, but who knows? Because apparently nowadays, the worst things get remasters, or the weirdest things get remasters,
Yep.
and everything else they're like, hey, this is an iconic timeless classic, and everyone's like, yeah, but that would take like 10 minutes to do.
Oh,
We're like,
the Mafia upgrade was really good. It turned into one of my favorite games of all time.
Mhm. Have you ever watched Video Game Donkey?
No, I heard that he he used if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he use like a slow motion mod for Sekiro?
I don't know. I don't. I wouldn't know that.
Because I thought
Um,
he did. I'm pretty sure someone Rurikon said that he used it. And he said he was like, yeah, I used the slow motion mod to get through Sekiro, and I don't feel bad about it. And I'm like, oh.
there was a journalist. I think there was some journalist that said there was a like a slow motion or an easy mode mod for Sekiro, but I do not think it was him.
Video game
Donkey.
Donkey Sekiro.
He has a video about remakes and remasters where some games just go through and make things look prettier and then ship it right back out, but other games go back and remaster with modern game design in mind. And he specifically references, I think, Uncharted 2 on crushing difficulty is like the most intense third person cover shooter firefighting you will ever experience in a game, because it is perfectly tuned to like not be overwhelming, but because it's the remastered version, the enemies like actually have to acquire you as a target instead of auto hitting you,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So yeah, I would like to see a good remaster of Dark Souls 1 where it's not just visual, but where some things that were had some weirdness or some clarity issues get cleaned up. And oh man, what I wouldn't give to fight Artorias in some like HD 4K beautiful setting. That would be so nice.
Do you think we cover those two initial topics pretty well for this podcast? Are you? I mean, we could. If you ever think about anything more, and on the next podcast, we could definitely add a part two to that. Um,
Uh, yeah, absolutely. I we've talked about quite a lot of things. I just noticed the time as well.
well,
Um,
I'm not saying we don't have to end the podcast. I'm just saying maybe we can
oh,
continue those two topics for another time when we've thought about more things to talk about, because there's definitely more to this. I just feel
mhm.
like I think we're kind of wrapping up on the topic, don't you feel?
Yeah, yeah, I'm done with that. Down
Um,
with that, not done with that.
I,
Yeah,
I
down.
really wanted to get to a topic, video games that remove features in the sequel prequels. You said you had a
Oh
few
boy.
games.
Oh yeah. I can name one that baffles me and really really grinds my gears. You know what really grinds my gears?
You know what really grinds my a terrible Peter Griffin impression.
Yeah. So, all right. Video game sequels that removed features and not even favorite features.
Hmm.
It just to me it's features. I will never understand games that take out features that everybody praised. Do they not Google their game? Do they not look, hey,
Yeah.
what are people saying about this game? I really like this feature. Take it away from them. Why? So one of the things that this is a very old example. I stopped playing a lot of the Need for Speed games. I do kind of want to get back into them, but I kind of stopped playing them after the two best Speed Breaker games. Need for Speed Most Wanted, which is widely heralded as the best Need for Speed ever created, and I am on that boat 100%. And Need for Speed Carbon, which came out right after it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there was the feature Speed Breaker, where you would tilt your control stick or you'd hit a certain button, and it would put you into a much more controllable, kind of slow motion version of turning, where you could actually it felt like you could make turns while maintaining speed, because yeah, while it's not necessarily realistic, it is Need for Speed. It is more arcade racer, and arcade racers are usually their biggest balance thing is how do we make you go fast while also making you turn. And I think this at Speedbreaker was the perfect answer. And then Pro Street, they were like, no. And then from there on out, I don't think we ever got it back. We might have. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that Speedbreaker never came back.
Oh, hold on.
Um,
Explain what that is again.
yeah, so Speedbreaker was a was something you could do in Need for Speed Most Wanted and Need for Speed Carbon, where as you're driving along, if you were, you're going almost 200 miles an hour
Uh-huh.
and you see a turn, most, modern racing games and realistic racing sims will have you hit your brakes and make the turn at a speed that a car will not flip over 7 times trying to take.
Okay.
But in Need for Speed, because they are arcade racers that are all about keeping and maintaining your speed, the speed breaker would put the game into this slow motion state where you had a much more, but not just like, oh, it's slower. It also gave you a lot like tighter, sharper control of your car, where you would slide around, you would drift around turns a lot better during it.
Mm.
And so you get to these sharp corners while you're going 200 miles an hour, pop speed breaker, slide through the corner, and then drop speed breaker, and that return to normal speed both felt really good because it felt like you were accelerating out of the turn, even though you probably lost a little bit of speed taking that turn. You didn't have to slam on your brakes and then carefully edge around a turn and then get back up to speed. It instead felt like you drifted around the corner and then flew out of that turn. It felt so good, and they got rid of it, and I have been bitter ever since. That is where my life went wrong.
Is that something you absolutely need?
It's not so much a need as much as it is a really, really good piece of game feel.
Okay.
Where, game feel is a really important part of a lot of games, where those games where you're just like, this just doesn't feel like the one that I liked. This
Yeah.
doesn't feel like the one that I remembered. I don't like the feel of it. That is more or less, that is what game feel is. And Speedbreaker contributed heavily to Most Wanted's very kind of cheesy action movie vibe that it had, where like it was more like a cinematic, car movie, like a Fast and Furious, than like it's a realistic racing sim. Um, and I think Speedbreaker was a huge, huge part of what contributed to that feeling of you are playing an arcade cinematics racing game instead of a racing sim, and everybody adored the heck out of Most Wanted, and I think that was a huge part of what contributed. That is the car handling, specifically in Speedbreaker, was second to none. I do not think that there has been a racing game to date where cars have handled as nicely as they did in that game, even at like ridiculous speeds.
Okay. I think
So
I'm looking up video footage of it now. Is it kind of similar to how Franklin's power works in Grand Theft Auto 5?
yeah, kind of. But even then, GTA cars handle a little weirdly. They feel very light, for lack of a better term. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, am I just gonna fly away in this car? It's just gonna whoa.
So it's more like a cool feature than something that the game absolutely requires from you.
Yeah, you could absolutely beat this game without using speed brake.
Okay.
But I think that it contributed a lot to the game feel.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I never played any of the games, so I don't really have a whole lot to input.
Okay. Yeah. So that's one that once it was removed, I just kind of was like, man, I missed that. And still to this day, I go back and I play Most Wanted all the time. That game holds up really well 18 years after it was released. Yeah. I stand by that 100%. Other games. This one isn't really me, but it is just feedback I have heard from my wife. The Sims. Between The Sims 3 and The Sims 4, EA, it was between that time when everybody was like actually okay with EA, and then everybody hated EA. So between The Sims 3 and The Sims 4, The Sims 3 had just a boatload of features at the beginning, and the add-on packs felt like add-ons, where it was like, oh, we're actually building on top of a really solid game. And then The Sims 4 came out, and there was like nothing. There were no toddlers at the beginning, so you would have a baby, and then they would turn into a 12-year-old. You was like, wait,
Huh.
I feel like I skipped a chapter.
Wow.
There was no swimming pools, which, in a game about living the idealized suburban life, you could imagine not having swimming pools was a bit of a turnoff. uh,
Hmm.
there were just so many things. Oh, there were no pets in it as well, and everybody like kind of smelled the blood in the water, and they were like, "Don't do it, EA." They said, "Hey, we added these features back in. It'll only cost you $20." And they sold all the features back as DLC packs.
Wow.
Yeah, it's as scummy as it sounds. Uh, um,
Jeez.
that one, she, for years she loved playing The Sims. She was like, I just can't get into it. There's a new pack every week. They've had less and less value in what they include in the packs. And it just, every time they do release a new thing, it breaks something else. And it just,
Hmm.
it was just an absolute mess. And it's, um, it baffles me to this day. Why in tarnation would you ever take a sequel and remove a feature or a gameplay function that was part of what made the original so good?
Yeah.
And just be like, yeah, that probably didn't help this game get to be the most popular thing in the universe.
Man,
Um,
they could get really dark with The Sims. I know The Sims is already kind of dark in a very, friendly way, but
mhm.
imagine if they made a M-rated Sims where where it gets more personal, where you can actually kind of
Right.
control the. See, I like Sims 2 for GameCube because you can actually control the character and move them around in the world and complete objectives. I really love that version, even though it's
Mhm.
not as complex as the PC. Me and my sister had tons of fun with it, and
Mhm.
so just imagine like a dark Sims game where you can actually control the character and maybe perhaps just kind of lead them into dark paths or something like that. There's a lot of potential for the
I
series.
think I know the game that you're talking about. It's called Grand Theft Auto.
Ah.
You buy a house and then you go kill people and commit crimes. That's all I'm saying. Like it's just The Sims but dark.
uh, well, not detailed enough to what I want, but
Yeah, you have to if you don't get to also get a blue collar office job, then it's not a real Sims game. Like
yeah, I'm starting to come to the conclusion when it comes to organically adjusting Grand Theft Auto 5, I'm gonna have to work on like a budget and changing the language. I think I'm gonna change Grand Theft Auto 5 to Japanese or something like that. That way, I
oh
don't.
my word. That is going to be very interesting. Um yeah, I'm trying to think of it. Was a couple other ones that I was thinking of. I know if I walked over to my game shelf right now, I would probably be able to find like five. One that I'll talk about while I wait for that is Maple Story 2. That was the dumbest thing that Nexon's ever done, and these are the people that have done a lot of dumb things. Um, Maple Story 2. Did you ever hear about how that whole debacle went down?
No.
So Maple Story, huge, big, awesome, popular game that's been out since like 2003 in Korea. Wow, it doesn't get much crazier than that. Let's make Maple Story 2. Okay, so is it going to be like the same title that we know, but just with more stuff? No, it's going to be a 2D voxel based top down game that sort of looks like Minecraft, but also with Maple Story chibis. And what?
Hmm.
That why is it called Maple Story then? Because it takes place in the same world, it has some of the same monsters, and some pretty good background music. That's like some snazzed up versions of themes from the original game. But it doesn't feel like that. No, it doesn't feel like Maple Story at all. So why would I play it? It pretty much just was like, yeah, let's take Maple Story and suck all the charm out of it, and that's why That's how Maple Story 2 happened. And Maple Story 2 released here in the US in 2018 or early 2019, and it was shut down by 2020.
Wow.
So yeah, it did not go over well. And they were like, "Oh, I guess it just didn't do well." I think it's only open in Korea still right now. So
I can't imagine what it was like being a gamer back then on the Nintendo and really loving a game like Castlevania and Legend of Zelda, and then when the sequel came out, people I wonder what the mass reaction was because
oh gosh.
Simon's Quest is one of those cryptic games where you gotta stand somewhere for like what 30 seconds before a hurricane or a little dirt devil comes out and reveals a path underwater, and then Zelda 2 is like it's like a regular 2D side scroll like Castlevania, isn't it?
Which one?
Z-
Castlevania
Legend of Zelda
2.
2.
Oh yeah, that one's a 2D side scroller. Yes.
Yeah, and it had a lot of weird names. I watched the Cinemassacre review of it, um, and it was really weird the decisions they made. I don't remember every single detail, but I remember that some things were had very odd names. The enemies,
Hmm.
but I can't imagine that disappointment receiving a game that wasn't the game that you enjoyed originally.
Yeah, I think that's happened with a lot of series pivots over the
Yeah.
years where they say, "Oh, we're gonna pivot to a whole new thing," and then everyone's like, "What is this?" And they're like,
Well,
"It's a new thing," and why?
well, I mean, a lot of it's been successful, like with Grand Theft Auto. I mean, imagine really loving Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2, and then all of a sudden Grand Theft Auto 3 is like, oh, we're 3D now, 3D open world.
Mhm. That is true. Yeah, there are times where it has definitely gotten better, um, and sometimes also, time is time makes the heart grow fonder, or I
Hmm.
think it's actually absence makes the heart grow fonder, but sometimes just time in general can really alter perception of a lot of things. Like, remember when Metal Gear Rising Revengeance came out, and everybody was like, "What does this have to do with Metal Gear? We don't like this. This isn't a Metal Gear game." And nowadays, it is like the most memed on thing, and everybody adores the hell out of this game. And you can't go 5 seconds online without hearing "Standing here, I realize."
That's a very interesting game because there's a lot of the slicing mechanic was really cool.
That was a really well executed mechanic because it felt good to do.
Hmm.
And I also think that, like, kind of going on this whole idea of like sequels that remove mechanics, I think sometimes you have to get to a point where you acknowledge that some mechanics were only good and only fun for one game, and they were in the game that they were in that game, and they were fun, and then that's it. Let's just forget about them. That was fun. Like, oh, there's one that I was thinking of. Red Faction Guerrilla. Did you ever play that ever?
No, no, I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is exactly.
So humans are colonizing Mars, and but Earth is being a jerk and saying, "Hey, you guys owe us a lot of taxes," and Mars is like, "Yo, no taxation without representation," and they try to pull in America, and so you join this resistance force that's fighting back against the Earth, like the Earth soldiers, who are oppressing the people and making them ship all their resources back to Earth while the people of Mars are barely surviving. And it is so it is one of those games that's like it hits on a really weird mechanic that you're like, I never asked for this, but this is so good. This is exactly what I wanted. Where you have a sledgehammer is your melee weapon, and you can break down structures. If it is a structure in the game, you can smack it, and you can break out pieces of it until it can collapse. And
Wow.
it is so much fun. Where it also works with like explosives and explosive charges, um, and it is really good at embodying the whole like idea of the whole guerrilla warfare, where you'll have these missions where you're like, I don't know if I could take this compound by just charging at it and engaging in a prolonged gun battle,
Mm.
but if I place charges at the base of all the parts of the hangar, I can blow it up and collapse it on their helicopter or their air support, so they won't get that. And then I can do this all from this rooftop, so I can smash in the roof and then drop down and kill the commander. You can strategize around destruction, and it was a really cool feature. But I think it only would work in that game because of the very specific setting, and it contributed to the guerrilla feel of it. Um,
You,
so yeah,
do you mean gorilla?
I gorilla. Oh yeah, gorilla. Yeah, I always see it. I'm like, oh yeah, gorilla, because the ILLA, gorilla tortilla.
well, I think it's gorilla because of like heck, the gorilla team or something in history. Unless they intentionally pronounce it that way. I always thought it was pronounced gorilla.
Gorilla. Okay, yeah, it is gorilla. I was just checking the pronunciation. Well, you learn something new every day. But yeah, I always call it gorilla because I see it. And I'm like, it looks like a Spanish words. In Spanish, is something that has two eyes. It has like two L's. Usually is r, or in two R's. It gets rolled. It says like gorilla, but no, it's gorilla.
Oh, okay.
Yawn, bro. Guerrilla warfare, dude.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Guerrilla warfare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, that's now that you bring it up, I'm like, oh, that's happened to a lot of things, and there are games that definitely have hurt from having their having features removed, but there are also games that have definitely, um, you know, made big switches that have definitely seen a major leap in success because of things they took out and things that they put in.
Hmm.
Man, that's so it's just so weird to think of, and also just looking at my my Steam library right now. I'd also have to see like my physical game library. But yeah, that's happened with quite a lot of games. Huh.
So you don't have any more to mention?
Nothing I can think of right now. No.
Okay, well maybe I want to go ahead and go through my list, and if you think of one, just
Yeah.
let me know.
All right.
All right, my first one is Film Editor, and they stopped doing this in Driver Parallel Lines, and basically Driver One, Driver Two, Driver Three, which by the way, Driver Three is probably one of my biggest guilty pleasures in gaming.
Wasn't the Driver series one of those games that people went back to? They're like, "Yo, this is really good."
I
Like a lot of people, from what I've heard, at least.
I haven't really heard a whole lot of reaction from the Driver series because a lot of people are attached to Grand Theft Auto. I
Mm.
personally love it because I really love the handling of the vehicles, and a lot of the level design is created just so you can drive your vehicle between buildings and stuff and jumping ramps, and I always found it fascinating. Of course, Grand Theft Auto was designed that way, but something was always very distinct about the Driver series. But in Film Editor is definitely one thing Grand Theft Auto I felt stole from Driver, because once Driver stopped doing it, I think Grand Theft Auto kind of jumped on it like, hey, let's take that. And
Mm.
um, because Grand Theft Auto 4 had it for PC, they didn't have it for consoles. But then Grand Theft Auto 5 eventually added it for consoles. So it's not exactly gone, but it's just they took it out of. Okay, when Driver Parallel Lines was announced, I actually found out about it through a magazine. I really missed those days where you found out about a video
Mm.
game by flipping a page. And
Man.
well, the entire time before the game came out, I kept imagining, I'm like, oh man, all the movies are gonna make with this, all the crazy stuff I did with Driver 3. I still have those replays saved, by the way, from Driver 3. Maybe I'll upload them to the channel sometime just for fun. And
Mm.
so Driver Parallel Lines came out, and it was a fun game. It was great. I loved it. I wish they would remaster it and port it over, but there's not a demand, unfortunately. But it came out, didn't have one, and so I was like, oh, all right. But I didn't have to wait too long because I think that was released in 2006. Driver Parallel Lines, and
What?
let's
Wow.
see.
That
Did you
sounds.
play that?
I just remember hearing about the Driver series. I just didn't know it was like that old. I think the most recent one I've heard of was Driver San Francisco.
Yeah, that one was weird. I tried playing and I just couldn't get into it.
Because I think it was Zero Punctuation. He had a really funny review on Driver San Francisco where he was, I don't know, he just had this a lot of really funny things to say about it. I might send you a link to that. But yeah,
But
I
oh sorry,
haven't played any of them. I haven't played any of them though.
Driver Parallel Lines does a very interesting thing where in the story, in the middle of the game or the story, whatever, it advances like 20 years, 20 or 30 years, and your character ages because he gets arrested at some point in the story. So of course he doesn't get out till 20 or 30 years later. So then the map updates to modern times, and you're playing as the old version of your character.
Huh.
And I don't think I've ever seen a game do it exactly like that before, where the whole map changes because it has to adjust according to the modern upgrades and constructions. And of
That's
course,
yeah.
yeah.
That's actually really cool. I swear I had heard about something that was doing that, or some game that had like construction or different things that were changing as the game world was playing through, but I cannot remember it for the life of me.
But but yeah, it didn't have a film editor, but I think I had so much fun with the game. It didn't bother me for too long, but it still just kind of sucks thinking back because the entire time I was waiting for the game, I was just thinking about a film editor. But I
Mhm.
2 years later, Grand Theft Auto 4 came out for PC, and I was able to do it there, so it wasn't too drastic, but something I remember as a kid. My number two is cutting tails off in Dark Souls. It was just in Dark Souls, and then
Yeah.
never came back for some reason.
Hmm.
Now it technically comes back in Elden Ring, but it's not significant in any way, and it's also kind of vague in its use because it's for the squid enemies. You can cut their tentacles off, but they regenerate after a certain amount of time. So
Oh.
so that's a weird. I don't know if that was a callback or something like that, but I'm like, man, you guys clearly can still do it. Why don't you guys still do it?
Yeah, I think that the cutting off like tails and stuff, it does lend a nice amount of so like viscerality, if that's even a word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it makes it so that it feels like your attacks have some impact, and I guess that a lot of games have kind of strayed away from dismemberment. Like, what was the last game that had? I mean, aside from like horror games, obviously, but remember when just like every other Star Wars game, you could cut off arms and legs and stuff. Like, did you ever play the Jedi Academy games?
No.
Oh, that one, it was so good. It was a T-rated game, but yeah, absolutely. Your lightsaber could cut off arms, cut off hands, cut off legs. There was like this really cool kill animation where you would like if you were locked sabers with somebody, you would slide your blade down and cut their hand off and then slash through their body. It's like because if they cut their hand off, they drop their saber because they can't hold it, and
Mm-hmm.
so then you slash through their body. They had so many creative things that they did with that, and it was like, yeah, it was super normal. I think Star Wars always was very good at having a tasteful explanation for bloodless dismemberment, where it was like, yeah, because lightsabers cauterize wounds pretty much the second they touch, um, because it's a kind of a really really hot beam cutting through you. So yeah, anything it touches would probably immediately sear over.
There's a.
But
Oh, sorry.
oh no, continue.
There's a game called Bloodstorm. It's kind of like Mortal Kombat, but you can actually rip off the arms and legs of the person you're fighting, and eventually they're just a torso with a head, and the only way you can attack is
Just
squirting blood
headbutt
on
each
your
other.
opponent. It's a really cool idea, but it just wasn't executed well as a fighter. It's something I really
Mhm.
remember just because of that concept. But definitely look that up. It's not really well known, but yeah, that would be really fun to see again. But
Huh. That's yeah, super interesting. And that's actually one of those things that I guess is kind of related to this is not just features being taken out of games, but things that used to be in games that just aren't anymore.
yeah,
I think is also one of those topics. It's like it really gives you the vibes of the horse staring out over the water, going, man. And you remember these things that were super prevalent in games,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's just not. Like the aggressive monetization of games, I think has destroyed a lot of game design fundamentals. Where a lot of games that have to be designed around being a live service first and a game second are really, really hampered in design, because things need to be designed to encourage you to pay in whatever way possible. And I don't know, it's hard. It feels like it's harder to find really, really good games that live on their mechanics alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've talked about a few, like I know you've been playing you're terrible at parking, or whatever it's called.
You suck at parking.
You suck at parking, yeah. You suck at parking. You've been playing like Frogun. You've been playing, all these games that, that's kind of what the indie sphere has had to take over. Is, hey, remember when you had to buy a game because word of mouth told you that it was super kick ass?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what indie has to do now. Um, and it feels just like such a shame that a lot of really fun features feels like games have to be more sanitized, because some features, that could have been, not even risque, but just like, overly violent, like I said, with the Star Wars games and Dismemberment. It was fun. Yeah, it's, that sounds weird, and it's, get me on a list or whatever, but it was fun to, do that kind of stuff. It added to the charm and the enjoyment of the game, because that's what happens in Star Wars. We see Luke's hand get cut off. We see the dude in the cantina get his arm cut off. Like, there's a lot of dismemberment in Star Wars, and
Mm-hmm.
so that was a big part of the games as well. And nowadays, I can't remember the last Star Wars game. I think there was some in Jedi Fallen Order. I don't remember.
Do they even dismember anything in the sequels? I can't remember.
They do, yeah. They Oh yeah, this the sequel. Oh wait, are you talking about the sequels or
I'm
the
talking about the
prequels?
new sequel. Sorry.
The new ones. Uh, if I have to think this hard about it, it's not good or memorable.
Yeah.
It's not well done like it was
Not like Count Dooku's head
everywhere else.
falling off and rolling to the side.
Yeah, that, because that was one of the things, is it adding to the real, the viscerality of Star Wars, and kind of like regrounding it. Like, hey, just because there's space laser, there's space wizards and lasers, doesn't mean people don't still die in this. And like
Hmm.
that moment of Anakin, "Zha!" and it just, the quiet as his head just kind of falls to the side. You're like, oh, oh my. It's a moment that brings you back down. And I can't remember a lot of things about the sequels now that you mentioned that, and that makes me really sad. um
uh,
People forgot how to have fun, is what I think the message there is.
yeah, without trying to go too deep into what I dislike about Disney, we probably should move on.
Oh man, what, ragging on Disney? That's like my second favorite pastime.
Oh God, freaking Disney, man. Mm.
They're good at ruining things. um I am trying to. Don't you dare meow at me. Sorry, a cat just walked into my room. I know there's at least one more thing that I am thinking of, for things that removed features. I feel like it was. I feel like it was one of the Pokemon games, but I don't think so. I know a lot of people. There was a lot of backlash about how the Pokedex was being cut down for the Generation 8 games.
Hmm.
But then I realized, and today or yesterday, Pokemon released a video of an encounter with all now 1008 Pokemon that are in Pokemon, and I was like, oh, this is a logistical nightmare. And there's somebody that has a whole video about how, Pokemon is a logistical nightmare. But could you imagine, with, where graphics are today, even though Pokemon games aren't stunning, they are still way better than they were on handhelds. And having to model 1,008 individual things with different attacks and everything,
Hmm.
that's a lot of work. um, I understand why some things would have to be cut. I get it. Uh, so I don't know. I think that that's one of those things that I am kind of interested in. Is just like, where do you think the turning point was? Where do you think that it felt like a lot of games, shifted their focus away from the gameplay first mindset that a lot of, I would say, probably like the 2000 to 2011, 2012 mindset seemed focused on, like the one of the biggest decades for gaming, I would say, was the 2000s to the 2010. What year specifically do you pinpoint that at, though? If it's later, if it's earlier?
um, could you please repeat that question?
Yes. Um. So, like I was saying, uh, gaming. Everybody always talks about gaming feels different. Gaming feels just
Mm-hmm.
weird. And I think that it feels like a lot of games forgot the focus on fun is first, and gameplay first.
Mm-hmm.
And what year do you think that happened? Like, what was like, if you look back at all your favorite games, what was the year that you could put a hard cutoff and say, since this point, the releases of high quality gameplay, gameplay focused games, from large companies. Obviously indie creators are always going to make crazy cool stuff, but it feels like AAA publishers stopped putting out really high quality, cool, good games at this year. What year would that be?
Definitely the PS3 generation.
The seventh generation,
Yeah.
right before the PS4 and the Xbox One.
Mm-hmm.
So like 2012 ish.
Yeah, that's where I
Yep.
started noticing a lot of a significant drop in games I didn't like. Um, well, yeah, because there was a lot of games coming out like Heavy Rain and stuff that were too cinematic. You didn't really see
Hmm.
stuff like that on the PS2, and so I think
Hmm.
once developers kind of got the hold of, hey, we can make these games super cinematic. I think that's when things started really shifting away from gameplay and because I know on the PS2, I feel like I wanted to play everything for PS2. I don't know if it's just because I was just a certain age, but once PS3 came out, I never got that feeling again that I wanted to play everything for PS3.
Hmm. Yeah, I do think that is definitely one of the points you could look at and be like, uh, I think gameplays shift to the obsessive chase for graphical superiority at the expense of gameplay, because there were some games during the PS3 generation and whatnot. There was a lot of games during the PS3 generation that were good graphics, especially for the time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
have you seen like gameplay of the original Last of Us
Oh yeah,
on the PS3? How the heck did they get that thing to run that?
I
It
know.
looks so good for PS3.
I mean,
Even Skyrim is pretty
I
impressive.
mean, look at Ascension, God of War Ascension. It looks spectacular. I mean, that looks like a PS4 game to me.
Mhm. Yeah, but God of War, was that the
That was the last God of War for PS3. Actually, the last God of War in that playstyle.
Ascension? Oh,
It's one of the underrated God of War games, in my opinion. I loved it. I thought the gameplay was spectacular. A lot of people don't like it because the story sucks. It really does. But
mhm.
when you're not caring about story and you're more concentrated on gameplay, I think it's spectacular.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm looking at like somebody doing a boss run. I could see this being, if you told me this was a PS4 game, I'd say it's like, yeah, it was like I would say looks like a PS3 game that was ported to PS4, or
Mm-hmm.
like a PS3 game that they last minute decided would come out on PS4.
Yeah.
But it definitely looks really, really good. And like, yeah, I could see this on the PS4 100%.
Especially the last boss. My goodness, the I can't. I remember just being blown away by the graphics on the last boss. It
Oh,
just
Electo and Tisiphone or whatever. Uh, that's what the like the big flying through the sky with like lightning. I'm just watching a
oh no, I'm talking
replay of
about
it.
the Kraken.
The Kraken. Okay, this is a Kraken. It looked like sky for a second. It's like, oh, this clouds? No, those are not clouds. Yeah, this is a Kraken. And there's lightning going off, and he's in the ocean. And yeah,
Like
that is impressive for a PS3 title for sure.
man, his face and everything, all the little details on his face. I'm like, oh man, it's so beautiful. I'm
Yeah,
looking at it too myself.
yeah. I kind of tend to agree with you that I feel like the PS4 and the Xbox One era was kind of where we took the dive into always online. And I
Hmm.
think once that word was introduced, it was a game over for everything. Not everything, obviously. I think that that games still have a lot of great things coming out and doing a lot of really good stuff. But I do think that was like a big hit and where a lot of people kind of where we started to see the rise of that sentiment in people of why are games not fun anymore.
Hmm.
You've seen that sentiment floating around, right?
Yeah.
And I think it started there because the phrase always online, and that's where we started caring about live service, microtransactions, and it felt like gameplay was no longer the main focus of making a great experience and then thinking what they can add later. And I think that is also one of those things that I'm most worried about with Elder Scrolls 6 is Skyrim came out in a time before I had heard the term live service, even though live services existed. That was like World of Warcraft, and that was it. Subscription based MMOs
Uh
was a
huh.
live service, and also League of Legends was out in 2011. But nowadays, I feel like it's almost not retroactively tainted, but I feel like there's gonna be some designed things from like ESO and whatnot that are gonna creep slowly and slightly into Elder Scrolls 6 that only really work in that online environment, but not in the single player one. And it's just not gonna feel as good as Skyrim did.
Mm.
Look at me, look at that. I can take any conversation and turn it into Skyrim. That is my superpower, dude. Uh, but
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely
that's
understand
it.
that.
And I agree with that cutoff point as well because like I think I've mentioned I have this weird there's this weird cluster of games that I really like, and all of them came out in like 2010 to 2012. So Skyrim, Dark Souls, Planet Side, 2011, 2011, 2012. Um, League of Legends, which I guess that's its own beast. I don't even know if I could say I like the game or I tolerate it. The last Guitar Hero came out in 2010. Um, there, I don't know. There was a lot of stuff. Holy moly! I'm just taking a look at a lot of these things. Yeah, around that 2011, 2012, before we got new consoles. I think that is around where a lot of things shifted.
Yeah.
And I think that enough people at least are talking about it that we're going to probably in the next few years, if not starting this year, we're going to start seeing a swing back, um, because there's only so much you can sell a game on graphics and
Oh, sorry.
cinematics and whatnot. Oh,
Hold on 1 second. Sorry.
yeah.
Maybe it's still there.
Yes,
Sorry
I
about
am
that.
still.
I'm sorry I had to cut you off in the middle of saying something, but my wife came in and she had the speaker on on her
Ooh.
phone.
Yeah, so what I was saying there, though, was I believe that there's only so far that we can go with graphics. Like, from PS2 to PS3, that was absolutely insane, the graphical leap there.
Hmm.
But then PS3 to PS4, there were some games on the PS3 that looked like they could have been PS4 games. There were some games on the PS4 that looked like they could have been PS3 games. And then PS4 and PS5, I think capability, I actually do think it was a larger leap than PS3 to PS4. Maybe I'm weird, but I genuinely think that was a larger leap. Um, and then We and then yeah, but I don't know how much further. I mean, you've seen the Unreal Engine 5 demos, right?
Uh, I don't know if I. Let's see. What games exactly?
There's not a lot of, I don't think there's a lot of games out for it, but there is a lot of demos that have been made in it where it's like, why are you showing me a picture of real life?
Okay, yeah, I saw the one where the girl is running around the caverns.
Yeah, it's a little unbelievable, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I can't wait to
Um
start seeing games like that. I mean, that does look spectacular. As long as the gameplay is good, though. I mean, yeah, I mean it'll be pretty, but it needs to have engaging gameplay.
exactly, and that was going back to my thing. It's like, Unreal Engine 5 is like huge, and spectacle and visuals are cool, but gameplay is why we have video games. If we want to look at something pretty, we have movies
Hmm.
that look better than Unreal Engine 5 because they film them in real life. And the movie theaters don't need to worry about graphics cards. But I think that we're probably going to get to a point where graphics are superseding like what affordable graphics cards can make, and therefore we're going to see a scaling back of investment in graphical fidelity and whatnot, and mm, uh, see a resurgence of let's make gameplay focused games where we have a solid core mechanic that we have spent a long time refining and perfecting and curating. Because if you look at all the most popular games, I think that eventually the people with the money are gonna realize this, because that's how everything happens in this world. Is it's only when the people with the money realize it, um, is they're gonna look and they're gonna say, "Hey, why the hell are you guys spending 50 not billion, whoa, $50 million on this game when some dude made scary monsters pop out at people with still images and it makes more money than this?"
Hmm.
What? You know what? Five Nights at Freddy's
Yeah.
was cobbled together with duct tape and rocks, and it is one of the biggest franchises in the universe now. And same thing you've seen with like League of Legends, Fortnite, World of Warcraft, even. um there's honestly, that's something I'm actually probably going to be doing a video on soon, is something probably along the title or the concept of I don't trust pretty games, because
Yeah.
if you have to look that good, what are you hiding? What do what don't you have if you do look this good? Because there are games that do both, that look amazing and play amazing. I think one that is a bit contentious, may not be agreed upon by everyone, but I think Horizon Zero Dawn did it really well.
Hmm.
And the Horizon games, I think they do good with spectacle. And oh my gosh, you're fighting robot dinosaurs with primitive weapons, while simultaneously being absolutely breathtaking to look at. Partially because they're first party Sony games, so they have a way better understanding of the hardware that they're working with. Same thing with the recent Spider-Man games. Absolutely amazing how they look and how they play. Um, but it's definitely more common nowadays when I see a really really pretty game, or especially a really like uh high octane spectacle of a game trailer. I'm like, okay, but what does it actually feel like to play?
Yeah. Do you think that it's possible that it might not be soon, but maybe 10 years from now, that games will focus so much on cinematics that people will start resorting to just watching them on YouTube to save money?
People have already done that.
Yeah, yeah, I know it's
Yeah,
happening. I'm just
yeah.
saying, do you think it'll be so significant that developers will actually lose money?
Yes, 100%. I Well, actually, no, I don't. I think it will get close to that point, and when they realize that point, or like I said, the people with money realize that point,
Mm.
they're gonna scale back and they're gonna say, "Hey, if we wanted to invest in something that people can watch and possibly pirate, we'd go invest in a movie.
Yeah.
Because at least there's some ticket sales that we can make money on.
Well, you also got the price of video games going up,
Yeah,
especially with the
that's
PS5 games going up to $70. And
mm,
so if they're barely putting any interaction in video games where you're just basically just walking around and stuff is happening, a group is eventually going to come out and say, "Hey, why are we dropping $70-$80 on a game that we can just simply watch on YouTube and enjoy the story on?"
mhm. Yeah. If you want us to watch your game story, then we'll watch your game story gladly, but we probably won't pay you for it.
Because
Um,
I
yeah,
mentioned
game
in my
movies.
oh sorry.
Oh yeah, game movies. That's like a kind of a YouTube niche that a lot of channels are filling, where they'll just take all of the cutscenes and like the relevant in-game, dialogue, and they'll just splice it together. Bada bang! It's a game movie.
Wow. Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know how far movies will get in general in terms of interaction. I think some things will just get so gimmicky people won't even bother with it, and so it'll probably just fall flat anyway.
mhm. Yeah, a lot of people have leveled that comment, that idea. The what are they called? Quantic Dream, David Cage, uh, things like Heavy Rain, like you were talking about,
Mm.
Detroit Become Human. Um, those a lot of people said, so why am I watching a movie with button prompts? If as Zero Punctuation puts it, I could probably emulate this experience by watching the TV and having to chase my dog to get the remote back every couple of minutes. Like,
You want you want to hear an example of cinematics taking over gameplay in a recent game?
yes, please.
God of War Ragnarok. There's a part where you're playing as one of the characters, and there's a part where the enemy jumps out. And you know that God of War has its button, its quick time events.
Quick time, yeah, QTEs.
So an enemy jumps at a character that you're playing as, and you got to tap circle. And so what normally happens if you don't tap on circle during a quick time event?
You lose, you die.
Guess what happens? Nothing happens.
What?
You just sit there with the enemy's blade up to your neck, and nothing happens until you interact with it. You cannot
The,
fail.
so as I've I heard it referred to plenty of times. Quick time events that you can't fail are just please press this button to continue the game.
I know.
They just press pause on your remote and said please press play.
Imagine watching a movie and a character walks up to a door and a little button pops up to signify the signal that you're supposed to tap something on the remote, and the actor just stands there awkwardly for.
I forgot. I think it was Citizen Kane, but it's same vibe as I'm pretty sure it was Citizen Kane, where there's a scene in one of the scenes. It's like midway or like
Ooh.
late in the movie. There's a cockatoo that goes "Ah,"
Hence why you don't
and
need
like
to
squawks.
be this stuff. on your
Sorry,
table.
my cat just knocked over a bunch of stuff.
Oh, cats. We love them until we don't.
Was there a thought you needed to finish?
Yeah.
My wife's giving me the look.
Okay. Yeah, so in like Citizen Kane, where they had this like cockatoo give a squawk, and the director said, "Yeah, I put that in there just in case people were falling asleep because this is like a 3-hour movie."
Mm.
And so I kind of feel like that some QTEs in games absolutely get to that point where you're just checking. This is just an awakeness check. Why are you doing this to me? Yeah, I do think that, while there are cinematic moments in games, the real test of like a well-designed game is if you can create cinematic moments in gameplay itself. This will probably be where we can wrap up because since you said you're getting the look. There's two games that I can point to that have really good cinematic moments in gameplay. From soft games, obviously. A lot of them where that sequence that you've been trying to dodge for your last 7 attempts, and then you finally realize it's that it's dodged through this get one attack in, dodge through this, wait a bit, run back, and it flows so nicely, and you're like, that looked amazing. Or like a lot of the Elden Ring bosses, like Melina and whatnot. Waterfowl dance is absolutely beautiful and stunning to look
Yes.
at, and looks even cooler when you dodge it.
Oh yes.
And so that's a cinematic moment. And another one was Spider-Man Miles Morales. The final boss fight on hard or the hardest difficulty was one of the coolest. Like, I can't tell if I'm watching a movie or playing a game, but I definitely am. I can't tell if I'm watching a movie or playing a game, but I am definitely pressing the buttons that's making what I'm seeing happen. Where there were so many things that would happen in fast sequence, but because I had spent so much time with the game on hard mode, I was like tuned in, I was in the zone. So there was things like, this boss would like throw things at you, and it's like dodging, grabbing it out of the air, throwing it back, but then she dodges it and then grabs something else rushing at you, but then you dodge over her, and this is all happening in like split seconds. You're like, what? Who's playing this game? Because it isn't me. And then the last example, it was in Bayonetta 2. There were a couple of fights in Bayonetta 2 where it was like, who is controlling this? Because getting like the perfect witch time dodges between like your own attacks and whatnot, I couldn't tell if this was like an anime that I was watching or if I was playing a video game. Those are the moments that I'm like, see that cinematic games? Do that more often. Instead of watching watching Miles Morales, beat up Taskmaster, or I forgot who the villain was supposed to be. I haven't played it since it came out. And watching him just beat up the main villain was like, that would have been whatever. Sure, okay, yeah, I win. But doing the thing that looked cinematic myself, there is no feeling better. And it wasn't in a quick time event. None of it was like anything scripted. It was just use the mechanics in game, and it is a full on fight, and it looks so cool. So yeah, do that, games. If I don't know if you're anybody here that is watching that is a game publisher, producer, whatever, make more games that when you play them right, you forget if you're playing a game or watching the coolest shonen battle anime you've ever seen. Thank you.
I most definitely agree. Well, unfortunately, I got to end it. 3 hours, not bad.
Yeah, short.
But
isn't that another new record for you?
Oh yes, this is a new record now. We'll go ahead and close if you don't mind staying after. That way we can talk real quick before we cut off entirely. But I definitely appreciate you coming on, and thanks everybody for watching. Is there something you want to say before you leave?
Yes. Thank you everybody for watching. And of course, thank you, Dangman. I'm calling you Dangman. For having me on. It's been nice being on these podcasts and just being able to talk about games and learn about how other people see games and whatnot, because it's really easy to get into our own echo chambers about games. And so it's just been really nice talking to you and being on. If you want to watch more video analyses about games, game design, and just really fun gameplay, come check me out at PunkDisorder on YouTube. This year I'm trying to start a whole bunch of new series. There's going to be a video, like I talked about earlier, on Sonic. Doing a video about Pokemon Nuzlocke. It should be out by the end of January. And a lot of fun stuff there. And of course, subscribe to Dangman too. He's earned it.
AKA the Gay Charlie.
The Gay Charlie, you're right. I just saw your thing was at Dangman20. So
I don't know why it still says that.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, that's all from me.
All right. Thanks, everyone.